The alarm doesn't go off. Your phone is dead. But somehow, you're awake. Your eyes open to darkness that feels different. The air tastes of salt and smoke. Your bed feels hard, rough, like wooden planks beneath coarse wool. The pillow under your head isn't memory foam. It's straw wrapped in leather that smells like animals and sweat. You sit up, and your body feels different. Stronger, heavier. Your hands are calloused and scarred. There's an ache in your shoulders like you've been rowing for days. Outside, you hear voices speaking in a language that sounds like thunder rolling across mountains. Norse, Old Norse. And somehow, impossibly, you understand every word. The tide turns with the dawn, someone says. We strike when the monks are at morning prayer. Strike? Monks? You look around and see other shapes in the darkness. Men sleeping on benches around a long fire pit. Shields hang on the walls. Round shields painted with ravens and wolves. Spears lean against wooden posts. This isn't your bedroom. This isn't your world. This is 793 AD. You are a Viking, and today you're about to become part of history. Welcome, brave soul, to a journey unlike any other. I'm your guide through time, and tonight we're going to live history together. Not just learn about it. Live it, feel it, breathe it. Before we dive deeper into your new life as a Viking raider, take a moment to settle in. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're listening from tonight. Now, I have to be honest with you. This channel is still small. We're a tiny community who believe that ancient stories can help us sleep better and dream deeper. But what we lack in numbers, we make up for in genuine care for each other's rest and peace. If tonight's Viking journey helps you find the deep sleep you've been searching for, and I truly believe it will, would you consider hitting that like button? It really helps us reach other people who are lying awake at 2 a.m., desperately wanting rest. And if you want to join our little family of history lovers and peaceful sleepers, that subscribe button would mean everything to us. I spend hours researching these ancient tales because I genuinely believe they can quiet your racing mind and carry you into the most restful sleep. Your support, even something as simple as a like, tells me that this matters to you too. You swing your legs over the side of your sleeping bench and your feet hit the cold dirt floor. The shock travels up through your body like lightning. This is real. Every nerve ending screams that you're not dreaming. The longhouse around you erupts in chaos as men wake up. But this isn't gentle stirring. This is warriors preparing for war. The sound hits you like a physical blow. Steel being sharpened on whetstones, leather armor being checked, weapons being tested with deadly precision. A massive man with arms like tree trunks sits up on the bench directly across from you. His torso is a canvas of scars, white lines crisscrossing his chest and arms like a roadmap of violence survived. When he sees you staring, he grins with teeth that have clearly been knocked out and regrown crooked. Finally awake born, his voice sounds like gravel in a crusher. I'm Eric Ironside. Today you become a man. He stands up and you realize he's enormous, probably 6.5 feet of pure muscle and menace. But it's not his size that makes your blood freeze, it's what he does next. Eric picks up a wooden practice sword and without warning, hurls it straight at your head. Your body moves before your mind catches up. You duck, roll sideways off the bench, and come up in a crouch with your hands ready to fight. The sword embeds itself in the wooden wall exactly where your skull was a heartbeat ago. The entire longhouse goes dead silent. Then Eric throws back his head and roars with laughter. That's what I wanted to see. Your grandfather's blood still runs true. Other warriors bang their fists on the wooden benches in approval. Apparently nearly dying is some kind of Viking mourning ritual. Good reflexes, Eric continues, yanking the sword from the wall. But reflexes won't keep you alive when Saxon steel is coming for your throat. Today we find out if you're truly one of us. He tosses you the sword properly this time. When you catch it, something incredible happens. Your hands know exactly how to grip it. The weight feels perfect, natural, like this weapon was made specifically for your body. The test, Eric announces to the watching warriors. Single combat, boredom against whoever volunteers to teach him humility. A younger warrior, maybe 25 with blonde hair and a cocky grin, jumps up immediately. I'll humble the dreamer. This isn't practice, this is trial by combat. Real weapons, real danger, real blood if you screw up. The circle forms instantly. Warriors create a ring of bodies and steel, their eyes hungry for violence. You can smell their excitement. Sweat, leather, and something else, something predatory. First blood wins, Eric declares. Begin. The blonde warrior comes at you like a hurricane. His sword cuts through the air where your ribs were a split second before. You barely twist away in time to feel the steel whisper past your skin. But your body knows what to do. Without conscious thought, you're moving, blocking, attacking, dodging with skills that feel ancient and embedded in your bones. The clash of steel on steel rings through the longhouse like church bells. Sparks fly where the blades meet. The blonde warrior is good, but something impossible is happening. You're better. Your sword finds the gap in his defense and draws a thin red line across his forearm. First blood, you win. The longhouse explodes in cheering. Warriors who were strangers moments ago are now pounding your back, calling you brother, accepting you as one of their own. But Eric's eyes are different, calculating, impressed. You fight like your grandfather, he says quietly, so only you can hear. Like a man who's been killed before. But that's impossible, isn't it, Born? The question hangs in the air like a blade at your throat. Because somehow, impossibly, it feels like you have been killed before. Like your hands remember the weight of a sword taking a life. What kind of man are you becoming? After breakfast, Eric leads you outside into the crisp morning air. The village is built along a fjord, Norse, a narrow inlet of impossibly blue water surrounded by steep, rocky cliffs. Longships bob at anchor near the shore, their carved dragon heads pointing toward the grey sky like mythical beasts ready to hunt. The village itself is smaller than you expected, maybe 30 buildings scattered along the water's edge. Most are simple wooden structures with turf roofs, but a few are larger, long houses like the one you slept in, built to house entire extended families or groups of warriors. Children run between the buildings, chasing chickens and dogs. Women tend gardens and tend fires. Old men sit in doorways, carving wood or mending nets. It looks almost peaceful if you ignore the weapons hanging from every doorpost and the scars marking every adult face. Come, Eric says. Time to see if you remember how to fight. He leads you to an open area behind the longhouse where several men are already practicing. They move in slow circles, wooden swords and shields dancing in complex patterns. The sound of wood striking wood echoes across the water. Spen, Eric calls to a lean man with a black beard. Test young Bjorn's memory. Make sure yesterday's drinking didn't wash away his sword skill. Spen tosses you a wooden practice sword. It's heavier than you expected, but your hand closes around the grip like it belongs there. The weight feels right, natural. Shield, Spen says, and throws you a round wooden shield reinforced with iron bands. It's painted with a snarling wolf's head. You slip your left arm through the leather straps. The shield settles against your forearm perfectly. Your body knows this equipment, even if your mind doesn't remember learning to use it. Spen circles you slowly, his own shield up, wooden sword ready. Let's see what you've got, Bjorn the Dreamer. He attacks without warning, a quick overhead strike aimed at your head. Without thinking, you raise your shield to block and counter with a thrust toward his ribs. He deflects easily, but nods approval. Good reflexes. Again, for the next several minutes you dance the deadly ballet of Viking combat. Your body moves without conscious thought, blocking, attacking, dodging. Muscle memory guides you through techniques you've never learned, at least not in this lifetime. Other warriors stop their own practice to watch. You catch approving nods, hear muttered comments about good form and quick feet. Whatever body you're inhabiting, it belongs to a skilled fighter. Finally, Sven steps back and lowers his sword. "You'll do," he says simply, high praise from a Viking warrior. Eric claps you on the shoulder, hard enough to stagger you. "Time to get your gear, real gear." He leads you back to the longhouse and to a wooden chest near your sleeping bench. When you lift the lid, the smell of leather and metal rises up. Inside are your weapons and armor. The mail shirt is the first thing you see. Iron rings linked together in a pattern so complex it must have taken months to make. You lift it out. It's heavier than expected, maybe 30 pounds of metal, but when you pull it on over your wool tunic, it fits perfectly. Next comes your helmet, not the horned monstrosity of Hollywood movies, but a simple iron cap with a nose guard. It's scratched and dented. This armor has seen battle before. Your sword is magnificent. 3 feet of pattern welded steel, the blade showing the wavy lines that mark masterwork metalworking. The grip is bound with leather worn smooth by use. This is not just a weapon, it's a work of art. You strap on your belt and hang the sword at your left side. A long knife, what they call a seafaring, hangs on your right. Your round shield goes on your back, held by a leather strap across your chest. Last comes your spear, 8 feet of ash wood topped with a leaf-shaped iron point. In your hands it feels alive, balanced, ready. "Now you look like a proper Viking," Eric says with satisfaction, "ready to win glory and gold." You nod, though part of you wonders what you've gotten yourself into. Around you, other warriors are making similar preparations. The longhouse fills with the sound of metal being sharpened, leather being checked, weapons being tested. Outside you can hear more activity. Women calling blessings, children asking when the warriors will return, dogs barking as they sense the excitement in the air. The raid is about to begin. The longship is even more impressive up close than it looked from shore, 70 feet from stem to stern. Built from overlapping oak planks sealed with tar and animal hair. The dragon head at the prow is carved with such skill, it seems ready to breathe fire. "Raven's wing," Eric says proudly as you approach. "I built her myself. She's carried me safely through storms that would break lesser ships. 24 oars stick out from the sides like the legs of some great water insect. The sail is furled now, but you can see it's made from thick wool cloth, probably dyed with expensive colors. Other warriors are already loading supplies. Water barrels, sacks of dried meat, coils of rope, extra weapons. Everything needed for a successful raid. You help carry provisions from the shore, your mail shirt making every movement heavier, but somehow more purposeful. The weight reminds you constantly that you're a warrior now, not just an observer. "Bjorn," a voice calls your name. You turn to see a woman approaching. She's young, maybe 20, with long blonde hair braided with colored ribbons. Pretty, with the kind of strength in her face that speaks of a hard but good life. "Ingrid," you say, though. You don't remember how you know her name. She stops in front of you and reaches up to touch your cheek. "Come back to me," she says simply. "Bring me a silver arm ring and stories to tell our children." Children, the word hits you like a physical blow. This woman isn't just some random villager, she's your wife. In this life, in this time, you have a wife who loves you and children who need you to come home. You nod, not trusting your voice. What do you say to a woman whose heart you're about to break by sailing away to raid and kill? She reaches into her apron and pulls out a small iron hammer on a leather cord. "Thor's hammer, Mjolnir. Wear this," she says, hanging it around your neck. "Let the Thunderer watch over you." The hammer settles against your chest, warm from her touch. It feels heavier than it should, weighted with meaning and responsibility you don't fully understand. "Time to go," Eric shouts from the ship. The tide won't wait for lovers' farewells. Other warriors are boarding now, taking their positions at the rowing benches. Each man has his own assigned seat, his own oar, his own space in the carefully balanced ecosystem of the longship. You kiss Ingrid quickly. Her lips are soft and taste like honey, then wade into the cold water beside the ship. The shock of it makes you gasp, but you climb aboard and find your bench near the middle of the ship. Your oar is 12 feet long, carved from ash wood and worn smooth by countless hands. When you grip it and feel the familiar calluses on your palms align with the smooth spots on the wood, you know this oar has been yours for a long time. Oars ready, Eric calls from his position at the steering oar. Give way together. 24 oars bite into the dark water as one. The longship surges forward with surprising speed and grace. Within minutes the village falls behind you, and you're rowing between the steep walls of the fjord. The rhythm is hypnotic. Pull, lift, reach forward, pull. Your body knows the movement perfectly. Around you, the other warriors row in perfect unison, their breathing synchronized with the stroke. Sing us out, Olaf. Someone calls to an older warrior with a magnificent grey beard. Olaf's voice rises in an ancient rowing song, something about ravens and battle and the sea roads to glory. Other voices join in, creating a harmony that echoes off the fjord walls. You don't know the words, but somehow your voice joins in anyway. The song seems to flow through you, part of whatever magic has brought you to this place and time. As you row, you think about what's coming. In your own time, you learned about the Lindisfarne raid in history books. June 8, 793 AD. The first recorded Viking raid on England. The beginning of 3 centuries of terror that would reshape Europe. But you never thought about the individual men who made that history. The farmers and craftsmen who became raiders. The husbands and fathers who left their families to seek fortune across dangerous seas. Now you are one of them. In just a few hours you'll step ashore on a foreign coast, raid a holy place and change the world forever. The fjord opens up ahead of you into the vast grey expanse of the North Sea. Seabirds wheel overhead, their cries mixing with the splash of oars and the ancient song of the warriors. Your new life as a Viking has truly begun. The change from the protected fjord to the open sea is dramatic. One moment you're rowing between gentle cliffs, the next you're facing waves as tall as houses rolling in from the horizon. Ship oars, Eric commands. Raise the sail. The warriors ship their oars in practiced unison, pulling them inboard and securing them along the sides of the ship. Meanwhile, 4 men work together to raise the massive woolen sail up the single mast. The sail catches the wind with a sound like thunder, and suddenly the ship is flying across the waves. The sensation is incredible, like riding a living creature through the sea. The dragon-headed prow cuts through each wave, sending spray back across the crew. But the sea has other plans. Without warning, a massive wave, twice the size of the others, rises directly ahead of you like a moving mountain of water. The ship climbs its face at an impossible angle, and for a terrifying moment you're staring straight down into a valley of churning foam. Hold fast, Eric roars as the longship crests the monster wave and crashes down the other side. Your stomach drops as the vessel plunges into the trough with bone-jarring force. Several warriors grab the sides, their faces green with seasickness. This isn't the gentle sailing you expected, this is survival. You settle back on your rowing bench and look around at your companions. In the grey morning light, with spray misting across their bearded faces, they look like something from legend, which you suppose they are. Storm coming, Sven says, pointing at the horizon where black clouds are building. We need to reach English waters before it hits, or we'll be fighting waves instead of monks. The Whale Road. Vikings called the sea by many poetic names. Whale Road, Swan Road, Seal's Path. But right now, it feels more like a battlefield where the enemy never tires. Suddenly, the water around the ship begins to change color from grey-blue to an ominous dark green. The waves develop strange patterns, crossing each other from different directions. Dangerous waters, Eric mutters, checking his sun compass. The sea remembers old battles here, ships that never made it home. As if summoned by his words, something massive passes beneath the hull. The entire longship shudders as whatever's below brushes against the keel. Warriors grab their weapons instinctively. What was that, you ask, your heart hammering? Best not to know, Sven replies, scanning the dark water. The sea keeps her secrets, and wise men don't ask too many questions. The tension breaks when a seabird lands on the dragonhead, a good omen, according to the muttered comments around you. Vikings read meaning into everything: bird flights, wave patterns, the color of clouds. As the hours pass, the storm clouds move closer, bringing with them a strange green light that makes the water look like molten metal. The wind picks up, howling through the rigging, with a sound that raises the hair on your neck. There, Eric shouts suddenly, pointing ahead. England. Through the spray and gathering storm, you can see a dark line on the horizon. Land. After hours of empty sea and growing danger, the sight is both relieving and ominous. The storm reaches you just as the English coast becomes clearly visible. Rain lashes across the deck in sheets, and lightning splits the sky with cracks that seem to shake the world itself. But Eric grins into the wind like a madman. The gods are with us, he yells over the thunder. They send us storm cover for our approach. He's right. No English lookout will spot a single longship in this weather. You'll reach Lindisfarne unseen, striking like lightning from the storm itself. The dragonhead cuts through the chaos toward your destiny, and you grip the sides of the ship, wondering if you're sailing toward glory or doom. As the English coast grows larger ahead of you, the reality of what you're about to do begins to sink in. This isn't a history lesson anymore. This isn't a movie or a book. You're actually going to participate in one of the most infamous raids in medieval history. The coastline is surprisingly beautiful. Green hills roll down to rocky shores, and you can see patches of cultivated fields inland. Smoke rises from what must be small villages, people living their quiet lives, unaware that Viking longships are approaching their shores. Look there, Eric says, pointing to a small island connected to the mainland by a narrow causeway. Holy Island. Lindisfarne. The monastery is visible even from this distance, stone buildings clustering around what must be a church, surrounded by a low wall. It looks peaceful, almost defenseless, which of course it is. Lower the sail, Eric commands. Back to oars. We go in quiet now. The great woolen sail comes down quickly, wrapped and secured to the mast. Once again 24 oars bite into the water. But now the stroke is different, slower, more careful. You're trying not to be seen. The ship moves through the water like a hunting animal, sleek and purposeful. The carved dragon head seems to sniff the air, searching for prey. As you get closer, you can make out more details of the monastery. There's a tall stone cross visible near what must be the main church. Gardens and outbuildings scatter around the central complex. A few figures in brown robes move between the buildings, monks going about their morning routines. Remember, Eric says quietly, his voice carrying to all the warriors, we want the treasure, not unnecessary killing. Dead monks can't tell us where the best silver is hidden. This is cold comfort to your modern sensibilities, but it's actually progressive thinking for the time. Many raiders would kill everyone just to be safe. You look around at your companions and see the change that's come over them. The casual friendliness of the sea voyage is gone, replaced by focused intensity. These are predators preparing to hunt. Weapons are checked one final time. Mail shirts are adjusted. Shield straps are tested. Everyone knows their role in what's about to happen. Borgian, Eric calls you over. You'll come with me to the main church. That's where the real treasure will be. Gold crosses, silver altarpieces, maybe even books bound with precious metals. Books, the thought makes you sad. Lindisfarne Monastery has one of the greatest libraries in medieval Europe. Illuminated manuscripts that are works of art as well as repositories of knowledge. Most of them will be destroyed or lost in raids like this one. But you're not here to change history. Somehow, impossibly, you're here to live it. The water is getting shallower now. You can see the bottom mide sand and scattered rocks. Seabirds cry overhead, disturbed by the presence of the longship. Ship oars, Eric says quietly. Prepare to beach. The ship's shallow draft allows it to run right up onto the sandy shore with a grinding sound of wood against stone. Before the ship has even stopped moving, warriors are jumping over the sides and splashing through the knee-deep water. Your feet hit the English shore with a shock of cold water soaking through your leather boots. The sand shifts under your weight as you follow the other warriors up onto the beach. Behind you, several men stay with the ship, ready to push off quickly if retreat becomes necessary. But the main force, 18 seasoned Viking warriors, forms up on the beach. You draw your sword, and the sound of steel leaving leather seems unnaturally loud in the morning air. Around you, other weapons come out: mide swords, axes, spears. The peaceful English morning is about to become very violent. Eric raises his shield and points toward the monastery with his sword. For glory and gold, he calls softly. For glory and gold, the warriors respond in unison. And then you're running across the sand, toward the causeway that leads to Holy Island. Your mail shirt rattling with each step, your heart pounding with fear and excitement, and the terrible knowledge that you're about to help change the world. The causeway to Lindisfarne is narrow and treacherous, mide-slick stones covered with seaweed and tidal pools. Your leather boots struggle for grip as you follow Eric and the other warriors across to the island, weapons ready, hearts pounding with anticipation. The monastery ahead looks larger as you approach, but also more vulnerable. The stone walls are about 10 feet high enough to keep out wild animals and discourage casual thieves, but nowhere near enough to stop determined Viking raiders. You can hear sounds from within the walls now, voices chanting in Latin the morning prayers that Eric mentioned back in the longhouse. The monks have no idea what's approaching through the storm, but something's wrong. As you get closer, you notice dark stains on the monastery walls, not recent damage, but old scorch marks. This place has seen violence before. A bell begins to ring somewhere in the complex, not an alarm, but the slow, rhythmic toll that calls monks to prayer. The sound echoes across the water, mixing with the crash of waves and the whistle of wind through stone. Eric holds up his hand, and the war band stops just outside the bowshot of the walls. This close, you can see that the monastery is even less defensible than it looked from a distance. The gates are wooden, reinforced with iron bands, but designed to keep out animals, not warriors. Two groups, Eric says quietly, his voice barely audible over the wind. Sven, take half the men to the main gate, make noise, draw their attention. Bjorn, you're with me. We go over the wall near the church and secure the real treasures. Your group moves silently around to the north side of the complex, where the main church building rises above the surrounding wall. Eric produces a coiled rope from his belt and tosses one end over the wall. It catches on something, probably a timber or stone projection. The climb is harder than expected. Your mail shirt seems to have gained weight, and your weapons keep catching on the rough stone. But finally you're hauling yourself over the top and dropping silently into the monastery grounds. You land in what looks like a slaughterhouse. Fresh blood pools between the stone pathways, but not human blood. The monks have been preparing animals for some kind of feast day, and the sight of butchered sheep and cattle scattered around their kitchen gardens fills the air with the metallic scent of death. The smell is overwhelming: blood and herbs and something else. Incense maybe, or the lingering scent of fear that seems to cling to old stones. Through the morning mist, you can see the main church building just 50 yards away. Its stone walls are magnificent, carved with intricate patterns and topped with a timber roof that rises toward heaven like a prayer made solid. But between you and your target, movement in the shadows catches your eye. A dog emerges from behind a storage building. But this isn't some gentle monastery pet. It's massive, part wolf from the look of it, with intelligent yellow eyes and teeth designed for tearing throats. A guardian bred for killing. The beast's muscles bunch as it prepares to spring, lips pulling back in a silent snarl. 40 pounds of fur-covered death about to launch itself at your face. Your hand moves to your sword hilt, but before you can draw steel, a young voice calls from the church entrance. "Fenrir, here boy." A monk appears, barely 18 years old, carrying a wooden bucket. He's wearing the brown robes that mark his religious vocation, his head shaved in the tonsure that identifies him as a servant of God. When he sees your group of armed and armored warriors, his face goes white with absolute terror. The bucket falls from his hands, clattering against the stone path and spilling water across the carefully maintained walkway. The crash echoes off the monastery walls like thunder, and suddenly the peaceful morning erupts into chaos. For a long moment, nobody moves. The young monk stares at you with wide, frightened eyes. The dog growls low in its throat, confused by the mixed signals from its master. You stare back, your sword heavy in your hand, acutely aware that what happens next will determine whether this raid begins with mercy or murder. Then from the other side of the monastery, you hear the sound you've been expecting: shouting, screams, the crash of wood splintering as Sven's group forces their way through the main gate. The distraction phase of the plan has begun, and there's no turning back now. The young monk's terror is so complete he can barely speak, but Eric's calm authority somehow cuts through his panic. "We're not here to hurt you, boy," Eric says, in what must be the local language. "We want the church treasures. Show us where they are, and no one needs to die today." The monk's mouth opens and closes soundlessly. Terror has stolen his voice, but his eyes dart toward the church doors, like a man pointing without moving his hands. From the other side of the monastery comes the sound of systematic destruction, doors being broken down, furniture being smashed in the search for hidden wealth. But also you notice, not the sounds of wholesale slaughter. Eric meant what he said about avoiding unnecessary killing. "Please," the young monk finally whispers, his voice barely audible over the distant chaos. "Please, don't hurt the brothers. We have gold, silver, whatever you want. Just don't hurt anyone." "Smart lad," Eric says approvingly. "Open the church doors. Show us the altar." The monk nods frantically and leads you toward the massive wooden doors of the main church. His hands shake as he lifts the heavy iron latch, and you can see sweat beading on his forehead, despite the cool morning air. The doors swing open with a groan of old hinges, and you get your first look inside one of medieval Europe's most important religious centers. The interior takes your breath away. Stone pillars support a high wooden ceiling painted with religious scenes in colors so vivid they seem to glow. Colored light streams through narrow windows, casting rainbow patterns across the stone floor, and there are treasures everywhere. The altar at the far end is covered with gold and silver vessels that gleam in the morning light, crosses set with precious stones, chalices worked with intricate patterns, candlesticks as tall as a man, their surfaces reflecting the colored window light like captured fire. But it's not just the altar. Books lie open on reading stands throughout the church, manuscripts with pages that shine with gold leaf and painted decorations. Scrolls are stacked on shelves carved into the walls. This is a treasure house of knowledge, as well as precious metals. Eric strides toward the altar with obvious appreciation, his warrior's eyes instantly cataloguing the most valuable pieces. These Vikings aren't just barbarian raiders, they're skilled craftsmen who can recognize quality when they see it. "Look at this workmanship," he murmurs, lifting a golden pattern, the plate used to hold communion bread. "Irish work, I think. See the knotwork pattern. This piece alone would buy a ship." But even as you marvel at the treasures, a new urgency enters the situation. "Eric," a voice calls from the church entrance. One of Sven's men appears in the doorway, his face flushed from running and his eyes wide with alarm. The ships, they're not just on the horizon anymore, they're closing fast. War galleys with full crews. Eric's head snaps up from examining a jeweled chalice. How long? Maybe 20 minutes before they reach the causeway. 15 if the wind holds. The atmosphere in the church changes instantly. What was a careful examination becomes frantic selection. Warriors move with sudden purpose, stuffing the most portable treasures into leather bags. Leave the heavy altarpieces, Eric commands sharply. Portable wealth only. Gold, silver, jewels, things we can carry at a run. A wooden box appears from somewhere, ornately carved and decorated with gold inlays and precious stones. It's obviously important, but more than that, it radiates a sense of significance that even hardened raiders can feel. What's in it? Eric demands of the trembling monk. The Lindisfarne Gospels, the boy whispers. Our most precious manuscript. Brother Edfrith spent 10 years illuminating every page. The cover alone is worth a king's ransom. Eric's eyes light up at the mention of gold, but before he can examine the box closely, another shout comes from outside. 12 minutes. They're flying war banners and rowing hard. The box is thrust into your arms with sudden urgency. Guard this with your life, Eric hisses. More gold in those pages than anything else we'll take today. The weight surprises you, not just the physical heft of the decorated wood and metal, but the historical significance. You're holding one of the most important books in medieval Europe, soon to become one of history's most famous stolen treasures. Outside, the sounds of looting become more frantic. Men calling to each other, the crash of furniture being overturned, the jingle of precious metals being stuffed into bags. Through the church's narrow windows you can see movement on the water. 3 dark shapes growing larger with each heartbeat, their oars flashing in unison as they race toward the island. 8 minutes. The estimate comes from multiple voices now, all of them tight with controlled fear. Eric takes one last look around the church, his professional eye noting what has to be left behind. Centuries of accumulated wealth, and you can only take what strong men can carry at a dead run. Time to go, he says grimly. The English are coming, and they'll be in no mood for mercy. You clutch the book box tighter as the reality hits you. This isn't just a raid anymore. This is a race for your life, with the cold North Sea as your only escape route. Eric doesn't hesitate. Load everything valuable we can carry quickly. Leave the heavy altarpieces. Bjorn, you take the book box. He thrusts the ornate wooden container into your arms. It's heavier than it looks, not just from the gold decorations but from the weight of the precious manuscript inside. You're holding one of the most important books in medieval Europe. Please, the young monk says desperately. That book contains the word of God. It's taken a lifetime to create. You can't just, I can do whatever I want, Eric interrupts, but not unkindly. That's what it means to be Viking. Around you, the other warriors are grabbing anything portable and valuable. Golden chalices disappear into leather bags. Silver plates are wrapped in cloaks. Jeweled crosses are stripped from their mountings. The systematic looting that might have taken hours is now compressed into minutes. Only the most precious items make the cut. Things that can be carried easily and traded for high prices in Scandinavian markets. Move, Sven calls from the doorway. Those ships will reach the causeway in less than an hour. The warband flows out of the church like water, no longer trying to be silent. Speed is everything now. You follow Eric across the monastery grounds, the precious book box clutched against your chest. Other monks have appeared, older men in brown robes who watch helplessly as their life's work is stolen. A few brave ones try to interfere, but they're gently but firmly pushed aside. Eric's policy of minimal violence is holding, even under pressure. At the wall, the rope is still hanging where you left it. Eric goes first, hauling himself up and over with practiced ease. Then he takes the book box from you so you can climb. The descent to the beach feels endless. Your mail shirt seems to have gained weight, and your arms ache from gripping the rope. But finally your feet hit sand and you're running again across the causeway toward where the longship waits. Behind you, bells are ringing frantically from the monastery. The alarm has finally been raised, though far too late to prevent the raid. The sound follows you across the water like an accusation. The ship is exactly where you left it, with the skeleton crew keeping it ready for quick departure. As soon as they see you coming, they begin pushing the vessel back into deeper water. "Load up," Eric shouts. "We leave now." You splash through the surf and haul yourself over the side of the ship. The stolen treasures are quickly secured in the bottom of the hull, wrapped in sailcloth to protect them from spray. The book box goes under your own bench, where you can keep an eye on it. Something about holding that manuscript feels significant, like you're responsible for ensuring it survives this journey. Other warriors pile into the ship, breathing hard from the run across the beach. Everyone made it out. No casualties on your side. A perfect raid, from a Viking perspective. Oars out, Eric commands as he takes his position at the steering oar. Give way all. 24 oars bite into the water simultaneously. The longship shoots away from the shore like an arrow released from a bow. As you row, you can see the English warships more clearly. They're larger than your vessel, probably merchant ships pressed into military service, slower but more heavily armed, with crews that outnumber yours significantly. "Can they catch us?" you ask Sven between strokes. He grins, showing teeth missing from old battles. "In open water, never. We'll be back in Norway before they clear the harbor." The rhythm of rowing settles your nerves. Pull, lift, reach, pull. Your body finds the meditation in the repetitive motion, even as your mind processes what you've just experienced. You've participated in one of history's most famous raids. You've seen treasures that museums would kill to possess. You've held a manuscript that scholars dream of studying. But more than that, you've lived as a Viking, felt their casual attitude toward violence, their pragmatic approach to survival, their genuine appreciation for fine craftsmanship even as they steal it. The monastery bells are still ringing behind you, growing fainter as the distance increases. Soon they'll be just a memory, along with the sight of those brown-robed monks watching helplessly as their world was torn apart. Ahead lies the open sea, and beyond that, home. Whatever home means for a modern person trapped in a Viking's body. The English coast shrinks behind you as the longship cuts through the grey waters of the North Sea. The 3 warships that came to Lindisfarne's rescue are visible as dark spots on the horizon, but they're falling further behind with each stroke of the oars. Eric calls for the sail to be raised once you're well clear of land. The wind catches the massive woolen sail with a sound like thunder, and suddenly the ship is flying across the waves. The sensation is incredible, like riding a living creature through the sea. You ship your oars and settle back on the rowing bench, finally able to rest those burning shoulders. The rhythmic surge of rowing is replaced by the steady forward motion of wind power. The dragon head cuts through each wave, sending spray back across the crew. "Let's see what we won," Eric says, gesturing to the bundled loot secured in the bottom of the ship. The warriors gather around as treasures are unwrapped and examined in daylight. Golden crosses gleam in the pale sun. Silver plates reflect the grey sky. Jeweled chalices catch and scatter the light like captured rainbows. Eric runs his hands over a golden pattern with obvious appreciation. "Irish work, I think. See the knotwork pattern. This piece alone would buy a ship." The craftsmanship is indeed magnificent. These Vikings aren't just raiders, they're skilled metal workers themselves, able to recognize quality when they see it. "Good work," Eric announces after tallying the haul. "Every man will go home rich enough to buy land or cattle." The book box rests securely under your bench, wrapped in oiled leather to protect it from spray. You check on it frequently, making sure it's still secure. The Lindisfarne Gospel's one of the most precious manuscripts in medieval Europe. Gunnar, the young warrior, sits down beside you. "You handled yourself well today," he says, checking the edge of his war axe. "Steady hands, clear thinking. First raids are always different than you expect," you reply. "True. My father said the sea changes a man, makes him understand what really matters." The ship climbs over a particularly large wave, and for a moment you can see for miles in every direction. Nothing but grey water and grey sky. with occasional seabirds riding the wind currents. "How do we know we're going the right way?" you ask Eric. He points to the wooden sun compass mounted near the mast. "Even when the sky is clouded, it shows us south. Plus the flight paths of birds, the color of the water. As the hours pass, the motion becomes hypnotic. The ship rises and falls with the swells. The sail strains against the wind. The carved dragon head seems to sniff the air like a hunting beast. Some of the warriors sleep, curled up on benches with their cloaks wrapped tight. Others keep watch or maintain their weapons. The sea can turn dangerous without warning." Steven works on his mail shirt, checking each ring for damage. "Good iron," he mutters. "Saved my life more than once." The afternoon sun breaks through the clouds, sending shafts of golden light across the water. The sea changes color from gray to blue-green, and you can smell something different in the air. Eric calls out, pointing ahead. "Home waters." Far on the horizon you can see the familiar outline of the Norwegian coast. After hours of empty ocean, the sight is deeply comforting. Real land, real safety, real home. The wind picks up, pushing the ship faster towards shore. The dragon head seems eager now, cutting through the waves with renewed purpose. "Ship the steering oar," Eric commands as you approach the ford entrance. The familiar stone pillars carved with runic symbols guide you between the rocky channels. Seabirds cry overhead. The water changes from deep ocean blue to the sheltered green of the ford, and there on the distant shore you can see smoke rising from cooking fires. People are gathering at the water's edge. Families who've been watching for your return. Children run along the beach. Dogs bark with excitement. You're almost home. The raid is over. The treasure is won. The real celebration is about to begin. Eric grins at you from the steering position, ready to see what heroes look like when they come home. The entrance to your home fjord is marked by two tall stone pillars carved with runic symbols, ancient markers that guide ships safely through the rocky channels. As the longship passes between them, a cheer goes up from the crew. "Home!" Gunner shouts, his voice echoing off the cliff walls. The familiar sights of the fjord welcome you back. Seabirds nest in cracks in the stone. Waterfalls cascade down from the heights above. The water is a deep blue-green that seems to glow in the late afternoon light. But more importantly, there are people on the shore. Word of your return has somehow preceded you, probably carried by fishermen who spotted the distinctive sail of Eric's ship. Families are gathering at the water's edge, children running along the rocky beach, dogs barking with excitement. As the ship approaches the landing, you can see Ingrid among the crowd. Your wife, though, the thought still feels strange. She's wearing her best dress, the blue one with the silver brooches at the shoulders. Her blonde hair is freshly braided with colorful ribbons. The sight of her creates a strange mix of emotions. Joy at seeing someone who cares about this body you inhabit. Guilt at the deception you represent. Confusion about what your relationship means across the barrier of time and consciousness. "Bring us in gently," Eric calls to the crew. No point in damaging the ship now. The oars come out one final time for the delicate work of bringing the longship to shore. The stroke is slow and careful, designed to slide the vessel smoothly onto the sandy beach without damaging the hull. As soon as the ship lands, people are splashing into the shallow water, wives embracing husbands, children climbing aboard to see what treasures their fathers have brought home, dogs barking and getting underfoot. Ingrid reaches you before you've even climbed out of the ship. Her arms go around your neck, and she kisses you with a passion that takes your breath away. "I was so worried," she whispers against your ear. "The sea was rough yesterday, and I dreamed of storms." You hold her close, breathing in the scent of her hair, herbs and wood smoke, and something uniquely her. For a moment the complexity of your situation fades. You're just a man whose woman is glad to see him home safe. "I brought you something," you say, remembering her request for a silver arm ring. You reach into your belt pouch and pull out a delicate silver bracelet taken from the monastery. It's beautifully made, with intricate knotwork patterns that catch the light. Not strictly an arm ring, but close enough. Her eyes widen as you slip it onto her wrist. It's beautiful, she breathes. Where did you find such craftsmanship? A holy place across the Whale Road, you say carefully. A place where they make beautiful things. She doesn't need to know the details of how you acquired it. In this time, in this culture, successful raiding is a source of pride, not shame. Around you, other reunions are taking place. Eric is showing his share of the treasure to his own family. A wife and 3 children who cluster around him, like he's a returning hero. Which from their perspective he is. The book box sits on the beach beside the ship, temporarily forgotten in the excitement of homecoming. You keep one eye on it while dealing with the social obligations of your return. Tell me everything, Ingrid says, taking your arm and leading you up the beach toward the village. What was it like? Were you frightened? Did you fight? Her questions are innocent, born of genuine curiosity and concern. But how do you explain what it's like to experience history from the inside? How do you describe the weight of participating in events that will be remembered for over 1,000 years? It was different than I expected, you say finally. The people there, they weren't so different from us. They wanted to live in peace, to protect what they loved. Ingrid looks at you strangely. You sound almost sorry for them. Maybe I am, a little. She stops walking and turns to face you. Bjorn, what's wrong? You seem different somehow. Changed. She's perceptive, your Viking wife. The experience of the raid, combined with your slowly surfacing modern consciousness, has indeed changed you. You're no longer purely the Viking warrior who left this morning, but you're not entirely your modern self either. Long day, you say, evasively. I need food and rest. She accepts this explanation, but you can see concern in her eyes. She knows something is different about the man who came home to her. As you walk up toward the longhouse, you turn back for one last look at the book box sitting on the beach. Eric or one of his men will deal with it soon. Probably sell it to some trader who recognizes the value of the illuminated manuscript inside. The Lindisfarne Gospels will survive this raid, just as history records. They'll travel far from their original home, change hands many times, but eventually find their way to safety. Your brief guardianship of them is over. The sun is setting behind the western cliffs, painting the fjord in shades of gold and red. Smoke rises from cooking fires throughout the village. The smell of roasted meat and baking bread drifts on the evening air. It's beautiful, this simple Viking life, harsh but honest, violent but direct. A world where a man's worth is measured by his courage and his sword arm, where wealth comes from strength and cunning, where the gods walk among mortals and fate is something you face with open eyes. But it's not your world, and as the night deepens, you can feel your modern consciousness growing stronger, like a tide returning to shore. The great hall fills with the sounds and smells of celebration. Long tables have been set up down the center of the building, laden with food that represents the best the village has to offer. Roasted pork and beef, fresh bread, wheels of cheese, barrels of ale and mead. The returning raiders are the guests of honor, seated at the high table near the fire pit. Eric sits in the place of highest honor, with you and the other successful warriors arranged in order of their contributions to the raid. As the ale flows and the stories begin, you find yourself relaxing into the role of returning hero. The other villagers look at you with new respect. You're no longer just Bjorn the farmer or craftsman, but Bjorn the Viking, who sailed across dangerous seas and returned with treasure. Tell us about the holy men, calls out an older woman from one of the lower tables. Were they truly as weak as the traders say? Eric stands, his horn of mead raised high. Weaker, he declares to laughter from the crowd. They fell to their knees and begged their god to save them. But their god has no power over Viking steel. More laughter and cheering. Someone starts pounding on the table with the flat of his knife, and others join in until the whole hall reverberates with the rhythmic sound. But they had beautiful things, Eric continues when the noise dies down. Gold and silver worked by masters. Their god may be weak, but their craftsmen know their trade. This draws approving murmurs. Vikings respect skill wherever they find it, even among their enemies. The feast continues with course after course of food and an endless supply of drink. Errol gives way to mead to wine taken from some previous raid. The conversation grows louder and more boisterous as the night progresses. You find yourself telling stories about the raid, carefully edited to avoid mentioning your modern knowledge or strange dreams. Instead, you focus on the physical details, the feeling of mail shirt against your skin, the weight of weapons in your hands, the sight of treasure gleaming in colored light. You speak like a poet, Ingrid says, her cheek flushed with mead and firelight, like one of the old skalds who remember the hero tales. A skald, a Viking poet historian, keeper of oral traditions. The comparison feels apt. You are, in a sense, recording history through your experience and retelling. Across the hall, a real skald rises to perform. He's an old man with a white beard that reaches nearly to his belt, wearing a cloak decorated with silver brooches that mark his professional status. Sing us the tale of tonight's heroes, someone calls out. The skald nods and begins to chant in the complex meter of Norse poetry. His voice rises and falls in patterns that are almost musical, telling the story of your raid in formal verse that transforms recent events into legend. He calls Eric ring giver and wave walker. You become young wolf and treasure winner. The monastery transforms into a golden hall across the Whale Road, defended by prayer warriors who fed the ravens, though in this case the ravens went hungry since no one was killed. The poetry is beautiful in its formal complexity, but also strange to your modern ears. Everything is described in elaborate metaphors. The sea becomes the Whale Road or Swan's Path. Warriors are wolves or ravens. Swords are wound makers or bloodletters. As the skald weaves your recent adventure into the tapestry of heroic verse, you realize you're witnessing the birth of legend. This is how history becomes myth, how real events transform into the stories that will be told around fires for generations. But even as you appreciate the artistry, you can feel your modern consciousness continuing to surface. The details of your real life are becoming clearer. Your apartment with its electric lights and running water, your job with its computers and deadlines, your friends with their smartphones and social media. The contrast is jarring. This morning you woke up in a world of swords and shields, where a man's worth was measured by his courage in battle. Tonight you're remembering a world of climate control and instant communication, where most people will live their entire lives without ever seeing real violence. Which world is real? Which is the dream? The philosophical question makes your head spin, or maybe that's just the mead. You reach for your drinking horn and find it empty. A serving woman immediately appears to refill it. Your status as a successful raider ensures you won't go thirsty tonight. As the evening progresses, individual conversations give way to group singing. Old songs about gods and heroes, sea voyages and battles, love and loss. Your Viking vocal cords know the words even when your modern mind doesn't recognize the tunes. Some of the songs are surprisingly beautiful. Ballads about faithful wives waiting for husbands who may never return. Laments for warriors who died far from home. Celebrations of friendship forged in battle. But others are darker. Modern songs that celebrate violence for its own sake, that treat human suffering as entertainment, that reduce complex moral questions to simple matters of strength versus weakness. You find yourself thinking again about the young monk at Lindisfarne, his terror as armed strangers invaded his peaceful world. In this hall, surrounded by celebrating raiders, his fear becomes just another amusing detail in the story of Viking success. The moral complexity troubles you, but you're too deep in this experience to step outside it now. You are, for tonight at least, truly a Viking. Your modern sensibilities are interesting mental artifacts, but they don't change the reality of where you are and what you've done. The fire burns lower as the night progresses, casting longer shadows across the hall. Some of the older celebrants are already nodding off, overcome by food and drink and the warmth of the great hearth. But the core group of raiders continues drinking and talking, reliving the day's adventure in ever more elaborate detail. Each telling adds new embellishments, transforms mundane moments into heroic deeds. By tomorrow the story will be even larger. By next month, you'll all be giants who fought off entire armies. By next year, the raid on Lindisfarne will have become an epic worthy of the gods themselves. This is how legends are born, not in the actual events but in the retelling, the gradual transformation of reality into something larger than life. And you're part of it now, forever woven into the tapestry of Viking lore. As the feast begins to wind down, and the celebrating becomes quieter, you find yourself in smaller conversations around the fire. The mead has made everyone philosophical, prone to deeper thoughts than the day usually allows. Eric sits beside you, staring into the flames with the contemplative look of a man processing a successful day's work. His share of the treasure sits in a leather bag beside his bench, enough wealth to buy several farms or outfit another raiding ship. "Good raid," he says simply. "Clean work, no unnecessary risks." You nod, swirling the last of the mead in your drinking horn. The golden liquid catches the firelight like liquid amber. "Do you ever think about them?" you ask. "The people we took from." Eric looks at you with mild surprise. "The monks, what about them? Whether they had families, whether someone is worried about them tonight." The question clearly puzzles him. They chose to live without families when they became holy men. That's their way. It's not entirely true. Many medieval monks came from wealthy families who grieved their loss to religious life. But Eric's perspective is understandable for his time. Monks are foreigners following strange customs, not really people in the same way Vikings are people. Still, you persist. They're human. They feel fear and pain like anyone else. Of course they do, Eric agrees. But so do we. So do our wives and children. The difference is that we're strong enough to take what we need, and they're not strong enough to keep it. It's a brutally simple worldview, but consistent with Viking philosophy. Strength determines survival. The gods favor the bold. Weakness invites exploitation. My grandfather, Eric continues, staring into the fire, used to tell stories about the old days. When the Romans came north, they took what they wanted from our people, burned our villages, enslaved our children, stole our gold. This is historically accurate. Roman expeditions into Scandinavia were often as brutal as Viking raids into Christian territories. But we learned from them, Eric says. We built better ships, forged better weapons, became stronger warriors. Now we take from others, instead of being taken from. He pauses to drink, then looks directly at you. That's the way of the world, Brujan. The strong take from the weak. The only choice is which side you want to be on. From across the fire, Seven joins the conversation. Deep thoughts for a feast night, he observes. Usually we save the philosophy for winter storms. Young Brujan is wondering about the monks, Eric explains, whether we should feel sorry for them. Seven considers this seriously. I felt sorry for the boy who showed us around. Reminded me of my youngest brother when he was that age. But feeling sorry doesn't change what needs to be done. What needs to be done, you ask? Surviving, Seven says simply. Providing for our families, building wealth so our children have better lives than we did. He gestures around the hall, where families sit together enjoying the feast paid for by the day's raid. Look around, Brujan. This village was poor 5 years ago. Bad harvests, harsh winters, children went hungry, old people died of cold. You look where he's pointing, and see what he means. The clothing is finer than you'd expect in a medieval village. The food is abundant, the weapons and jewelry display obvious wealth. Now look at us, Seven continues. Our children are fat and healthy, our women wear silver, our warriors carry the finest weapons. That didn't happen by accident. It happened because we learned to take instead of just endure, Eric adds. Because we built ships that could cross any sea, trained warriors who could defeat any enemy. Their logic is compelling within their worldview. These aren't mindless barbarians destroying civilization for the fun of it. They're practical men, solving practical problems. Poverty, vulnerability, the need to provide for their families. The fact that their solutions involve violence against innocent people is regrettable but secondary. In a world where might makes right, morality is a luxury only the strong can afford. I understand, you say finally, and you do. You don't agree with their methods, but you understand their motivations. The conversation moves on to other topics. Plans for future raids, gossip about neighboring villages, speculation about the weather for next week's fishing. Normal concerns of normal people living their lives the best way they know how. Gradually, the hall empties as families head home to their own houses. Only the unmarried warriors and a few die-hard drinkers remain by the fire, their voices growing quieter as the night deepens. Ingrid appears beside you, her hand gentle on your shoulder. Ready to come home? She asks softly. Home, the word has complex meanings tonight. This Viking life feels real and immediate, but your modern consciousness is becoming stronger with each passing hour. Soon you may wake up in a different world entirely, leaving this experience behind like a fading dream. But for now, Ingrid is real. Her touch is warm, her concern is genuine. Yes, you say, rising from your bench. I'm ready. You follow her out into the cool night air, where stars shine with a brilliance impossible in your light-polluted modern world. The Milky Way stretches across the sky like a river of light, so bright you can see by it. In this time, in this place, the cosmos feels close enough to touch. The gods are real presences in daily life, not abstract theological concepts. Magic and reality blend together in ways that make perfect sense. Tomorrow you'll face whatever comes next, but tonight you're simply a Viking warrior walking home with his wife under a canopy of ancient stars. Your house is smaller than you expected. A single room with a central fire pit, sleeping alcoves built into the walls, and storage areas tucked under the eaves. But it's clean and well organized, with touches that speak of Ingrid's care and attention. Woven hangings decorate the walls, their patterns intricate and colorful. Carved wooden bowls and cups sit neatly on shelves. A loom stands in one corner, with partially completed cloth still stretched on the frame. Sit, Ingrid says, guiding you to a bench near the fire. Let me see to your gear. She helps you out of your mail shirt, grunting slightly at the weight as she lifts it over your head. Underneath, your wool tunic is soaked with sweat, despite the cool sea air. You're exhausted, she observes, setting the mail carefully on a wooden stand built for the purpose. I can see it in your eyes. She's right. The day has been physically and emotionally draining in ways you couldn't have imagined. Living history is much more demanding than reading about it. Ingrid brings you a bowl of warm water and a soft cloth. The simple act of washing your hands and face feels wonderful after the long day of violence and travel. Tell me true, she says quietly, as she helps clean the salt spray from your beard. Are you hurt? Not just in body, in spirit. Her perceptiveness catches you off guard. How can you explain that you're not hurt so much as confused? That you're experiencing an identity crisis that spans over 1,000 years? I saw things today that made me think, you say carefully, about what kind of man I want to be. She nods as if this makes perfect sense. Raiding changes men. My father said so, and now I see it myself. Her father. You realize you know nothing about Ingrid's family, her background, her life before she became your wife. In this intimate moment, she's both completely familiar and utterly mysterious. What was your father like, you ask? Strong, kind to his family, fierce to his enemies. He died fighting Irish pirates when I was 15. She says this matter-of-factly, without self-pity. Death in battle is an accepted part of life here. He would have liked you, she continues. You have the same thoughtful way about you, always considering what your actions mean, not just what they accomplish. She brings you fresh clothes, a clean wool tunic and soft leather pants. As you change, she busies herself banking the fire for the night, her movements efficient and practiced. Ingrid, you say as she spreads sleeping furs in the alcove that serves as your bed. Do you ever wonder what life would be like if we lived differently? If we farmed instead of raided, traded instead of taking? She pauses in her preparations and looks at you seriously. Sometimes, but wondering doesn't change anything. We are what we are. Bjorn, Vikings, sea wolves. Our fathers lived this way, and their fathers before them. But what if we could choose something different? What if we could build a life based on creating instead of taking? The question clearly puzzles her. Create what? The monks you raided today, they created beautiful things, and where did it get them? We took everything they made, and they couldn't stop us. Her logic is unassailable within the context of her world. Beauty and learning are luxuries that only the strong can protect. Weakness, no matter how virtuous, invites exploitation. Come to bed, she says gently. Tomorrow's worries can wait until tomorrow. You climb into the sleeping alcove beside her, the furs soft and warm against your skin. She curls against your side, her head on your shoulder, one arm across your chest. I'm proud of you, she whispers into the darkness. You've become the man I always knew you could be. The irony is painful. She's proud of a Viking warrior who participated in a brutal raid. But you're not really that man. You're a modern person trapped in his body, struggling with moral questions he never had to face. As Ingrid's breathing deepens and she drifts towards sleep, you stare up at the smoke hole in the roof, where stars glimmer like distant jewels. The same stars that shine on your modern world, unchanged across the centuries. What happens when you wake up? Will you return to your own time, your own life? Will this entire experience fade like a dream, leaving only fragments of memory? Or will you stay here, in this harsh but honest world, living out the life of a Viking warrior, with a wife who loves him and a future written in steel and storm? The questions multiply in the darkness, but no answers come. You can only listen to Ingrid's peaceful breathing, feel the warmth of her body against yours, and wonder what tomorrow will bring. Outside, the wind picks up, rattling the wooden shutters and making the fire flicker. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barks once and falls silent. This is the world you've chosen, at least for tonight. A world of simple truths and complex consequences, where strength determines survival and the gods walk among mortals. Whether you'll still be part of it when the sun rises, remains to be seen. Sleep, when it finally comes, brings strange dreams that blend past and future in impossible ways. You're standing in the monastery at Lindisfarne again, but now it's filled with both medieval monks and modern tourists carrying cameras and guidebooks. The young monk who showed you the treasures is there, but he's wearing a museum name tag that reads Guide Medieval History Department. He's explaining to a group of school children how Viking raids shaped European history. The attack on Lindisfarne in 793 AD, he says in perfect modern English, marked the beginning of the Viking Age. But these weren't random acts of violence. They were economically motivated expeditions by skilled warriors seeking opportunities their homeland couldn't provide. One of the children raises her hand. Were the Vikings really as scary as people say? The monk guide smiles sadly. They were human beings like you and me. Some were cruel, others were surprisingly honorable. They lived in a different time with different rules. We shouldn't judge them by our standards. In the dream, you want to approach him, to apologize for the terror you caused, to explain that you're not really a Viking at all. But when you try to speak, only Old Norse comes out, Mor's words he can't understand. The scene shifts, and suddenly you're back on the longship, but now it's sailing through your modern city. The dragon head cuts through streets filled with cars and traffic lights. Your fellow warriors point in amazement at skyscrapers and billboards. Look at their longhouses, Eric says in wonder. They reach toward the clouds like the world tree itself. And their warriors, Sven adds, pointing to police officers directing traffic. They wear black armor and carry strange weapons. You try to explain about civilization, about how humanity learned to solve problems without constant warfare. But again, only Viking words come out. You're trapped between two worlds, able to understand both but speak to neither. The dream becomes darker. You're standing in a museum exhibit about Viking raids. Behind glass cases are artifacts you recognize, some from the monastery, others from your own village. A placard reads, "These items were looted during the Viking expansion period, representing the destruction of countless centers of learning and culture." A tour group gathers around the display, their guide explaining how Viking raids set back European intellectual development by centuries. Children look at drawings of fierce warriors attacking defenseless monks. The narrative reduces complex human beings to simple categories: barbarian and victim, aggressor and innocent. But what about their families? You want to shout. What about their children who went hungry? What about their own losses and fears? Still, no one can hear you. You're invisible, a ghost trapped between historical perspectives. The dream shifts again. Now you're in your own time, sitting at your computer, reading about the Lindisfarne raid. The article mentions that despite the violence, Viking culture made significant contributions to European development, advances in shipbuilding, navigation, metalworking and literature. You find yourself typing a comment on the article. History isn't about good guys and bad guys. It's about human beings making difficult choices in impossible situations. But when you hit enter, the words change on the screen to runic symbols you somehow understand. The past speaks to those who listen with both heart and mind. You wake with a start, the dream still vivid in your memory. Dawn light filters through the smoke hole in the roof, pale and grey. Beside you, Ingrid sleeps peacefully, her breathing soft and regular. For a moment you're not sure which world is real. Are you a modern person who dreamed of being a Viking, or a Viking who dreams of a strange future world? Both feel equally authentic. The calluses on your hands from yesterday's rowing, the ache in your shoulders from wearing mail, the salt taste still lingering in your mouth. All of it feels completely real, but so do your memories of the modern world. Your apartment, your job, your friends who would never believe this experience if you told them about it. You slip carefully out of bed, trying not to wake Ingrid, and step outside into the cool morning air. The village is quiet. Only the earliest risers are stirring. Smoke drifts from a few chimneys. A rooster crows somewhere in the distance. You walk down to the shore where the longship sits pulled up on the beach. In daylight it looks smaller than it felt yesterday, but no less magnificent. The carved dragon head stares out at the water with empty eyes that somehow seem wise. The book box is gone from where you last saw it, probably already traded to some merchant who recognized its value. The Lindisfarne Gospels are beginning their long journey through history, changing hands dozens of times before eventually finding safety in modern museums. As you stand there contemplating the ship and the sea beyond, you realize something has changed overnight. Your modern consciousness isn't fading anymore, it's stabilizing. You're no longer purely Viking or purely modern, but somehow both. You understand Eric's perspective on strength and survival, but you also know the cost of that worldview. You feel the bonds of loyalty to your shield brothers, but you also recognize the suffering they cause. Most importantly, you understand that history isn't a story with heroes and villains. It's the accumulated result of millions of individuals making choices based on limited information and unlimited pressures. The young monk at Lindisfarne wasn't weak, he was brave enough to show compassion even when terrified. Eric isn't evil, he's a man trying to provide for his family, the only way his culture allows. Both perspectives are true, both are incomplete. The sun breaks through the clouds, sending shafts of golden light across the fjord. Seabirds cry overhead, beginning their daily hunt for fish. Life continues, indifferent to human moral complexities. You hear footsteps behind you, and turn to see Ingrid approaching, wrapped in a woolen cloak against the morning chill. "Couldn't sleep?" she asks, slipping her arm through yours. "Too much to think about," you reply honestly. She nods as if this makes perfect sense. The first raid always changes a man. My father said it takes time to understand what you've learned about yourself. What have you learned about yourself? That's the question that will follow you whether you stay in this time or return to your own. What does it mean that you could participate in a Viking raid? What does it say about human nature that ordinary people can commit extraordinary violence when circumstances demand it? Whatever you're thinking, Ingrid says softly, remember that you came home, you kept your promises, you provided for your family. In her world, that's what matters. Not philosophical questions about morality, but practical results. You survived. You succeeded. You fulfilled your obligations. It's a simpler way of looking at things, but not necessarily wrong. You and Ingrid walk slowly back toward the village as the morning awakens around you. Other early risers are beginning their daily routines. Women feeding chickens, men checking fishing nets, children chasing each other between the houses. It's a peaceful scene that contrasts sharply with yesterday's violence. These same people, who are now tending gardens and mending tools, were celebrating brutal conquest just hours ago. The duality doesn't seem to trouble them at all. Ingrid, you say as you walk, do you ever wonder about the people we take from, whether they have lives like ours? She considers the question seriously. I suppose they must. But Bjorn, we can't live their lives for them. We can only live our own. It's a pragmatic answer, typical of her practical nature, but something in her tone suggests she's thought about this before. When I was young, she continues, maybe 12 or 13, Irish raiders attacked a village up the coast. They took several children as slaves. One of them was my friend Astrid. You remember the older woman who served stew in the longhouse, but this must be a different Astrid, a girl who was taken before she could grow up. I used to lie awake wondering what happened to her, whether she was cold, whether she was frightened, whether she remembered her family. Ingrid's voice grows quiet. Eventually I realized that wondering didn't help her or me, it just made me sad for no purpose. What changed, you ask? I understood that this is how the world works. Strong groups take from weak ones. It's been that way since the beginning of time, and it will continue until the end of the world. She stops walking and turns to face you. The only choice we have is whether to be strong or weak ourselves, whether to protect what we love or lose it to others. Her words echo Eric's philosophy, but coming from her they seem less harsh. She's not celebrating violence. She's accepting reality as she understands it. But what if there was another way? You persist. What if people could trade instead of raid? Build instead of take? Some do, she admits. There are merchants who cross the seas with goods instead of weapons, but they only survive because men like you are willing to fight for them when necessary. It's true enough. Even in your modern world, trade and diplomacy exist only because military force backs them up. The difference is that violence has become more organized, more distant from daily life. You reach your house and go inside to break your fast. Ingrid sets out bread, cheese and dried fish. Simple food but good quality. As you eat, you think about the parallels between this world and your own. In your time, economic competition between nations can be just as ruthless as Viking raids, but the violence is hidden behind corporate structures and government policies. Companies raid each other's markets and intellectual property. Countries impose economic sanctions that cause suffering for ordinary people. The methods are different, but the fundamental pattern remains. The strong take from the weak when they can get away with it. You're very quiet this morning, Ingrid observes, still thinking about yesterday, and today and tomorrow. You say, about how things connect to each other. She smiles at this. You always were given to deep thoughts. Even as a boy, you would sit by the water and stare at the waves for hours. As a boy, she's talking about Bjorn's childhood, memories that exist in this body but aren't accessible to your modern consciousness. You have a past here that you can't remember. Relationships that shaped a person you've never been. Tell me about when we first met, you say, curious about this life you've inherited. Her face lights up with the memory. You were 17, I was 15. My father brought me to the summer gathering at Trondheim. You were showing off for the other young men, trying to lift a stone that was supposedly too heavy for anyone but full-grown warriors. She laughed softly. You couldn't budge it. None of the boys could. But instead of walking away embarrassed, you sat down next to the stone and started examining how it was shaped, testing different handholds. Did I move it? Eventually, you figured out that the trick wasn't strength. It was leverage and balance. Once you understood the technique, you could lift what had seemed impossible. The story feels like a metaphor for your current situation. You're facing something that seems impossible, reconciling two completely different worldviews, understanding how you can be both Viking and modern person simultaneously. Maybe the answer isn't to choose between them, but to find the balance that makes both possible. What happened after that? You ask. You looked right at me and said, sometimes the impossible just needs to be approached differently. Then you asked my father if you could court me, and he said yes. He said I should decide for myself, which shocked everyone. Most fathers arrange their daughters' marriages without asking their opinion. This suggests that even in Viking society, there were people who thought beyond traditional patterns, who looked for different approaches to old problems. Why did you choose me? You ask. Ingrid reaches across the table and takes your hand. Because you think before you act. Because you look for solutions instead of just accepting problems. Because you're strong enough to fight when necessary, but wise enough to prefer other ways when possible. Her description of Bjorn sounds like someone you could respect, perhaps even become, a person who bridges the gap between thoughtless violence and helpless passivity. The morning light grows stronger, filling the small house with golden warmth. Outside, you can hear the sounds of normal life continuing, children playing, women talking, men working. Yesterday you participated in making history. Today you're living it. One ordinary moment at a time. Both are equally real, equally important. A horn sounds from the direction of the harbor, long low notes that echo off the fjord walls. The call brings people running from their houses, excitement rippling through the village like wind across water. Ship, someone shouts. Merchant ship approaching. You and Ingrid join the crowd gathering on the beach. Sure enough, a vessel is rounding the point at the fjord's mouth. But this isn't a Viking longship. It's broader, deeper, built for carrying cargo rather than warriors. Frisian trader, Eric says, appearing beside you with obvious satisfaction. Perfect timing. They'll want to buy what we brought back from England. The merchant ship approaches slowly, its crew clearly cautious about entering a harbor full of Viking warriors. But the horn calls are friendly, and eventually the vessel beaches safely beside the still damp drag marks left by yesterday's longship. The merchant captain who comes ashore is a middle-aged man with graying hair and expensive clothes. His ship's crew includes men from different lands. You can hear several languages being spoken as they secure their vessel. Hakon Thorson, the captain, introduces himself to Eric with a slight bow. I bring goods from the Frankish lands, the British Isles and the eastern routes. Eric Ironside, your friend, replies. And we have fresh treasures from across the Whale Road. The negotiation that follows is fascinating to watch. Both men are professionals, skilled at reading each other's strengths and weaknesses. The merchant wants to appear uninterested in your plunder, while secretly calculating its value. Eric wants to seem casual about selling while ensuring maximum profit. What kind of goods do you seek? Hakon asks diplomatically. The usual, silver, gold, worked metal. Maybe some books with interesting decorations. Books. Your heart jumps at the mention. You scan the merchant's ship and see several wooden chests that might contain manuscripts. I may have buyers for such items, Hakon says carefully, depending on quality and condition. The bargaining continues for nearly an hour, with both sides gradually revealing their positions. Eventually they reach terms C. The Lindisfarne treasures will be traded for silver, iron tools and exotic goods from distant lands. You watch as the book box is brought out and opened for Hakon's inspection. The merchant's eyes widen when he sees the illuminated pages of the Lindisfarne Gospels. Even someone primarily interested in profit can recognize extraordinary artistry. This is exceptional work, he murmurs, carefully turning pages. Irish style but more sophisticated than anything I've seen from their scriptoriums. English, Eric corrects. From the holy island we visited yesterday. Hakon doesn't ask for details about how the book was acquired. Merchants learn not to inquire too closely about their suppliers' methods. I have a buyer in Francia, he says finally. A monastery there that collects such manuscripts. They would pay very well for this. The irony is perfect. A book stolen from one monastery will find its way to another, where monks will treasure it as much as its creators did. The Lindisfarne Gospels will survive their violent displacement to inspire new generations of scholars and artists. As the trading continues, you notice something interesting about the merchant crew. They're clearly used to working with Vikings, but they show no fear or moral judgment. To them, this is simply business. Raiders and monasteries are both sources of potentially valuable goods. One of the crew members, a young man about your age, approaches while his captain is occupied with negotiations. First time seeing the aftermath of a raid, he asks in accented Norse. You nod, not trusting yourself to say much. Always strange, isn't it? Yesterday those books were sacred objects in a holy place. Today they're cargo to be sold to the highest bidder. Tomorrow they'll be sacred again in a different holy place. His casual acceptance of the moral transformation troubles you. Doesn't that seem wrong? He shrugs. Wrong is something that doesn't happen. This does happen, so it must be right somehow. The gods, whichever gods, allow it to continue. It's a fatalistic philosophy, but one that makes sense from a merchant's perspective. His job is to facilitate exchanges, not to judge the morality of what's being exchanged. Besides, he continues, books want to be read. Better that they travel the world, even by questionable means, than sit in one place gathering dust. There's something to this argument. The Lindisfarne Gospels will indeed travel widely, influencing artists and scholars across Europe. Their forced journey will ultimately spread their beauty and knowledge far beyond their original home. The trading session concludes with both sides satisfied. Eric's warriors will receive shares of silver and goods worth several years of normal farming income. Hakon will transport his new acquisitions to buyers who will pay even more handsomely. As the merchant ship prepares to leave, you find yourself thinking about the complex web of connections that made this exchange possible. Viking raids, monastic scholarship, international trade networks, and cultural exchange all intertwined in ways that no single participant fully understands. You're witnessing the medieval global economy in action, violent and chaotic by modern standards, but effective at moving goods, ideas and technologies across vast distances. The merchant ship sails away with the afternoon tide, carrying the Lindisfarne Gospels toward their next chapter in history. You watch until it disappears around the ford's mouth, carrying away the last physical reminder of yesterday's raid. But the memory remains, along with the strange dual consciousness that allows you to see these events from both medieval and modern perspectives simultaneously. Evening settles over the fjord like a soft grey blanket, bringing with it the kind of peaceful quiet that follows a day of important business concluded. The merchant's departure has left the village satisfied, mindless. Everyone will benefit from the wealth brought back from England. You sit with Eric on a wooden bench outside the longhouse, watching the last light fade from the western sky. The successful completion of the raid and the profitable trading have put him in a reflective mood. Good day's work, he says, testing the weight of a silver arm ring in his palm. The men are happy, the families are provided for, and we've shown that this crew can handle serious raiding. What comes next, you ask? Winter mostly, time to repair gear, build new ships, train the younger men, maybe a small coastal raid in spring to keep our skills sharp. But you're thinking bigger thoughts than next season's plans. You are indeed. The experience of living through this pivotal moment in history has raised questions you never expected to face. Eric, do you ever wonder if there's more to life than raiding and fighting? He considers this seriously. Sometimes. My father was a blacksmith before he became a warrior, made beautiful things. Yes, but also jewelry and tools. There's satisfaction in creating something that didn't exist before. Why didn't you follow that path? Because the times demanded warriors more than smiths. When I was young, Danish raiders were hitting our coast every summer. We needed fighters, not craftsmen. It's a reminder that Vikings weren't just aggressive raiders, they were also defending their own communities against other Vikings. The cycle of violence was self-perpetuating, each raid justifying retaliation, each retaliation requiring preemptive strikes. But now you ask, with your success, couldn't you choose a different life? Eric looks out over the darkening water. Maybe. There's enough silver now to buy good farmland, build a proper hall, live quietly. He pauses. The question is whether I'd be satisfied with that kind of life. Would you? I don't know. The sea calls to me, Bjorn. The feeling of a good ship under my feet, the sight of unknown coasts ahead, the test of matching my skills against whatever the world sends. He shakes his head. Hard to give up when you're good at something. You understand what he means. In your modern life, you probably have skills or interests that define who you are, things you couldn't easily abandon even if they caused problems. What about you? Eric asks. Yesterday morning you were nervous about your first real raid. Tonight you're asking philosophical questions like an old man. What changed? How do you explain that you've experienced history from both sides now? That you understand the human cost of Viking success in ways that go beyond mere sympathy for victims? I learned that things are more complicated than they seem. You say carefully, that good people can do bad things for good reasons, that there's usually more than one way to look at any situation. Eric nods slowly. Wisdom, dangerous wisdom for a young warrior, but wisdom nonetheless. Dangerous, because once you start seeing all sides of a problem, it becomes harder to act decisively. A warrior who hesitates dies. A raider who worries about his enemies' families comes home poor. It's the fundamental tension between moral complexity and practical necessity. Your modern world has the luxury of lengthy debates about ethics because most people are insulated from immediate physical danger. Eric's world demands quick decisions based on limited information. But maybe, Eric continues, that's not entirely bad. Maybe warriors who think are better than warriors who just follow orders. The observation surprises you. You hadn't expected such philosophical depth from a Viking raider. My grandfather fought in the great army that attacked Francia, Eric explains. He used to say that the commanders who won battles were the ones who could imagine what their enemies were thinking. Understanding your opponent isn't weakness, it's intelligence. This makes sense from a military perspective. The best generals throughout history have been those who could think like their adversaries, anticipate their moves, exploit their weaknesses. So maybe, you suggest the question isn't whether to understand different perspectives, but how to use that understanding wisely. Exactly. Eric stands and stretches. Come, Ingrid will wonder where you've gone. As you walk back toward your house, you notice how comfortable this life has become. The weight of weapons at your belt feels natural now. The calluses on your hands from rowing no longer surprise you. The rhythm of this medieval existence fits around you like well-worn clothing. But your modern consciousness remains present too, providing a constant commentary on everything you experience. It's like having two sets of eyes, two different ways of interpreting the same events. At your door, Eric clasps your shoulder in farewell. Sleep well, Bjorn the thoughtful. Tomorrow we'll see what new wisdom the day brings. Inside, Ingrid is waiting with a warm meal and quiet conversation. She asks about your talk with Eric, listens to your careful summary of his reflections on violence and leadership. He's right about thinking warriors being better, she says as you eat. My father always said that the most dangerous enemies were the ones who fought with their heads as well as their hands. Did you know him well? Eric, I mean. Since childhood. He's always been ambitious, but not just for himself. He genuinely cares about this village, these people. She pauses. That's why he's a good leader, even when his methods are harsh. As the evening deepens, you find yourself growing drowsy. The combination of physical exertion, emotional intensity and moral complexity has exhausted you in ways you didn't expect. Rest, Ingrid says, noticing your fatigue. Tomorrow will bring its own challenges, but as you prepare for sleep you wonder what tomorrow will actually bring. Will you wake up as Bjorn the Viking, continuing this medieval life, or will your modern consciousness reassert itself completely, leaving this experience behind like a fading dream? The uncertainty is both frightening and exciting. You've learned things about yourself and about human nature that will stay with you regardless of which world you wake up in. Outside, the night sounds of the village gradually quiet. Dogs settle down, children stop playing, adults finish their evening tasks. Peace descends over the fjord like a gentle blessing. You close your eyes and let sleep take you, curious about what dreams will come, what morning will bring, what lessons wait to be learned in the space between sleeping and waking. In the depths of the night, you find yourself drifting between sleep and wakefulness, suspended in that liminal space where dreams and reality blur together. Your body rests beside Ingrid's warmth, but your mind wanders across centuries and possibilities. The house around you breathes with the gentle sounds of a medieval night, wood settling as temperatures drop, the soft whisper of wind through the smoke hole, distant sounds from the village, a dog's sleepy bark, the shuffle of someone making a late visit to the privy, the gentle lowing of cattle in their enclosures. These sounds anchor you to this time and place, but they're joined by others that seem to come from elsewhere. The hum of electric lights that don't exist yet, the distant sound of traffic on roads that won't be built for 1,000 years, voices speaking languages that haven't evolved yet. You're experiencing time as a layered thing, all moments existing simultaneously. The Borgian who raided Lindisfarne, the modern person who dreams of being him, and countless others who will live and die in the years between mind, all present at once in this quiet moment. The thought should be disturbing, but instead it feels peaceful. You're part of something larger than individual consciousness, part of the continuous stream of human experience that flows from past to future like water finding the sea. Beside you, Ingrid stirs in her sleep and murmurs something in Old Norse that you understand without fully waking. She's dreaming too, perhaps of the children she hopes to have, the life she's building with a husband who isn't quite who she thinks he is. The guilt of this deception has faded, replaced by something more complex. You may not be the original Borgian, but you're living his life with genuine care for his responsibilities. You're providing for his wife, honoring his commitments, carrying forward his place in the community. In a strange way, you're keeping him alive by becoming him. The night deepens and your consciousness drifts further from ordinary awareness. You're no longer just experiencing this medieval life. You're understanding it from the inside, feeling how different assumptions about reality create different ways of being human. In this world, the gods are real presences who intervene in daily life. Fate is a force that can be influenced but not controlled. Death is a transition rather than an ending. Violence is a tool like any other mind. Dangerous but sometimes necessary. These aren't primitive superstitions, you realize, but sophisticated responses to the actual conditions of medieval existence. When life is uncertain, and death is always close, fatalism and faith become practical survival strategies. Your modern worldview, with its emphasis on individual choice, technological solutions and linear progress, would be equally strange to these people. The idea that humans can control nature, eliminate scarcity, or live without violence would seem like the wildest fantasy. Neither perspective is wrong. Both are adaptations to different circumstances, different challenges, different possibilities. As the night reaches its deepest point, you sense something changing. The boundary between your modern consciousness and your Viking identity is becoming more permeable. Instead of two separate selves struggling for control, you're becoming something new, a person who contains both experiences, both worldviews, both sets of memories. This hybrid identity feels surprisingly stable. The modern knowledge doesn't diminish the immediate reality of medieval life. The Viking experiences don't make modern values seem irrelevant. Instead, they inform each other, creating a richer understanding of what it means to be human across time and circumstance. You think about the young monk at Lindisfarne, and now you can hold both perspectives simultaneously. From the Viking viewpoint, he was weak, and his suffering was unfortunate but irrelevant. From the modern perspective, he was an innocent victim of senseless violence. But there's a third way of seeing him, as a fellow human being caught in the flow of historical forces beyond anyone's control. His pain was real, but so was the economic pressure that drove the Vikings to raid. His monastery's wealth was legitimate, but so was their poverty and desperation. Understanding doesn't mean accepting or excusing. It means seeing the full complexity of situations that simple moral categories can't capture. The implications extend beyond medieval history. Your own time has its own versions of necessary violence, economic exploitation disguised as legitimate trade, the strong taking from the weak through legal and social mechanisms rather than swords and axes. The fundamental patterns persist even when the methods change. A sound from outside pulls your attention back to immediate surroundings. Footsteps on the path, moving quietly but purposefully. Someone walking through the village in the deepest part of the night. You listen carefully, using senses sharpened by your Viking training. The footsteps are light, probably a woman. They move with confidence, not the hesitation of someone lost or drunk. Someone with a purpose and a destination. The steps pause near your house, and you hear a soft scratch against the wooden wall, a signal of some kind. Then the footsteps continue, fading into the distance. Ingrid hasn't stirred. Whatever message was being conveyed, it wasn't meant for her. In the morning you'll learn what the midnight signal meant. Someone needs to speak with you privately, or wants to arrange a meeting, or is passing along information that couldn't be shared openly. Medieval life is full of such subtle communications. In a small community, where everyone knows everyone else's business, important conversations often happen in darkness and secrecy. But for now you simply note the occurrence, and let it join the other mysteries that will resolve themselves in daylight. Your hybrid consciousness, part Viking, part modern, accepts both the immediate need to be alert for danger and the longer-term perspective that most midnight dramas turn out to be less dramatic than they seem. The night continues its slow progression toward dawn. Stars wheel overhead in their ancient patterns, indifferent to human concerns but somehow comforting in their reliability. The same constellations have guided travelers, inspired poets, and marked the passage of time for countless generations. You are part of that continuity now, another small consciousness, experiencing the mystery of existence under the vast sky. Neither the first nor the last to wonder about the meaning of it all, but perhaps among the few to experience it from such a unique perspective. Sleep begins to reclaim you as the night reaches its deepest point. Your breathing synchronizes with Ingrid's, your heartbeat slows to match the peaceful rhythm of the house around you. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, new choices, new opportunities to understand what it means to be human in difficult times. But for now there is only the quiet blessing of rest in a warm bed beside someone who cares about you. The last thing you notice before sleep takes you completely is the sound of the sea in the distance, Moore's waves against stone, eternal and unchanging, connecting this moment to all the moments that have come before and all that will come after. You wake slowly, naturally, as pale morning light filters through the smoke hole above your bed. No jarring alarm, no urgent need to rush toward obligations, just the gentle transition from sleep to consciousness that feels like surfacing from deep, peaceful water. For a moment, you simply lie still and take inventory. Your body feels different than it did yesterday morning, not just the physical changes, the new calluses, the lingering ache from wearing mail, the slight soreness from rowing, but something deeper. You inhabit this medieval form more completely now, less like a stranger borrowing someone else's life, and more like yourself in an unexpected place. Ingrid is already awake beside you, watching your face in the dim light with a small smile. "Good dreams?" she asks softly. Strange dreams, you reply honestly. But good ones, I think. She traces a finger along your jawline, studying your expression with the careful attention of someone who knows you well. You still seem different, changed. Not in a bad way, she adds quickly. Just deeper somehow, like you've seen something that gave you new eyes. Her perception continues to amaze you. Without understanding the specifics of your situation, she's intuiting the transformation that's occurring, the gradual integration of two different ways of being human. Maybe I have, you say. Maybe that's what happens when you face real danger for the first time. The world looks different afterward. She nods as if this makes perfect sense. My grandmother used to say that some people have to journey far from home to discover who they really are. Not distance in space, but distance in experience. Distance in experience. The phrase captures something important about what you've been through. You've traveled not just across centuries but across ways of understanding reality itself. What do you see when you look at me now? You ask. She considers the question seriously. The same man I married but more complete somehow, like you found pieces of yourself that were missing before. It's an apt description. Your modern consciousness hasn't replaced your Viking identity. It's integrated with it, creating something richer and more complex than either alone. The morning sounds of the village drift through the walls, children laughing, women calling to each other, men discussing the day's work, normal life continuing after yesterday's extraordinary events. I should check on the others, you say, though you're reluctant to leave the peaceful intimacy of this moment. They'll be fine for a while longer, Ingrid says, pulling you closer. The morning is young, and we have few enough quiet moments together. She's right. The demands of medieval life leave little time for simple companionship between husband and wife. This peaceful interlude is precious, worth savoring. You lie together in comfortable silence, listening to the gradual awakening of the world outside. A rooster crows somewhere in the village. Gulls cry over the water. The everyday symphony of human and animal life beginning another day. The signal last night, you say, remembering the soft scratching at your wall. Did you hear it? Probably Eric's wife. She does that sometimes when there's news that can't wait for proper daylight hours. Wife. You realize you haven't really thought about Eric as a married man, someone with domestic responsibilities that balance his warrior identity. What kind of news? Ships spotted, maybe, or trouble brewing with neighboring clans. Sometimes just gossip that's too interesting to keep until morning. She stretches like a cat in the warm furs. We'll know soon enough. The casual acceptance of potential danger is characteristic of this time and place. News of approaching ships could mean traders, raiders, or enemies, and the response is simply to wait and see, then react appropriately. Aren't you worried? You ask. About what? If there's real danger, the men will handle it. If it's just rumors, worrying won't change anything. She kisses your forehead gently. One thing I've learned from living with warriors: don't borrow tomorrow's troubles. It's practical wisdom born from a life where anxiety about things beyond your control is a luxury you can't afford. Save your energy for problems you can actually solve. Ip your energy for problems you can actually solve. Eventually the pull of responsibility becomes too strong to ignore. You dress in clean clothes, wool tunic, leather pants, soft boots, and prepare to face whatever the day might bring. Outside, the morning air is crisp and clean, carrying the scent of salt water and cooking fires. The village is fully awake now, busy with the 100 small tasks that keep medieval life functioning. You spot Eric near the harbor, examining fishing nets with several other men. When he sees you approaching, he waves you over with a grin that suggests good news rather than trouble. Bjorn, perfect timing. We've had an interesting morning message. The other men nod greetings. These are the village elders, the experienced warriors and successful farmers, whose opinions carry weight in community decisions. The signal last night, you ask. My wife heard from a fisherman who came in early. He spotted ships yesterday evening, 3 of them, sailing northeast along the coast. Northeast, away from your village, not toward it. The English warships from Lindisfarne, you guess. almost certainly, heading back to wherever they came from, probably to report the raid and organize a response. This news has implications. The English now know that Vikings are active in these waters. They'll be more prepared for future raids, more likely to patrol their coasts. Does this change our plans, you ask? It changes the timeline, Eric says thoughtfully. We'll need to be more careful about hitting English targets, but there are other coasts, other opportunities. One of the older men, a grizzled veteran named Orm, spits into the water and shakes his head. In my father's time, the English barely knew we existed. Now they'll be watching for us. Everything changes, Eric responds. The question is whether we change with it, or get left behind. The conversation continues for several minutes, touching on various strategic considerations, which coasts are most vulnerable, which seasons offer the best raiding weather, how to balance risk against potential reward. You listen more than you contribute, still learning the rhythms of Viking strategic thinking, but gradually you begin to understand that these men are not impulsive barbarians. They're calculating businessmen who happen to work in violence. Every raid is carefully planned, based on intelligence about targets, defenses, weather patterns, and political situations. The successful ones survive because they think before they act. What about other opportunities, you ask? Trade routes, political alliances, settlement possibilities. The question draws interested looks from the other men. Vikings are indeed involved in all these activities, though raiding gets more attention in the historical record. Now you're thinking like a true Viking, Eric says approvingly. Violence is just one tool among many. The smart leaders use whatever works best for each situation. Orm nods agreement. My son sailed east last year, up the river routes into the Slavic lands, came back with more silver from trading than he could have taken in 3 coastal raids. Less exciting, another man adds with a laugh, but easier on the sword arm. The morning discussion ranges over many topics: navigation techniques, ship design improvements, diplomatic contacts with various rulers, seasonal farming concerns. You realize that being a successful Viking requires knowledge of geography, politics, economics, and meteorology as well as fighting skills. It's a more complex and sophisticated culture than the popular image of mindless berserkers suggests. As the sun climbs higher, the group gradually disperses to handle individual responsibilities. Eric walks with you toward the longhouse where the morning meal is being prepared. You asked good questions back there, he observes, thinking beyond just the next raid, considering long-term strategies. Just curious about how everything fits together. Curiosity is a valuable trait in a warrior, helps you see opportunities that others miss. He pauses at the longhouse entrance. There's something else. The merchant yesterday mentioned news from the southern routes, political changes that might create new possibilities. What kind of changes? Frankish kingdoms fighting among themselves again. Internal wars mean less attention paid to coastal defenses. Eric's eyes gleam with professional interest. Might be worth investigating. New raids, new targets, new opportunities for wealth and glory. The cycle continues, driven by the same forces that brought you to Lindisfarne: economic pressure, political instability, and the simple fact that some people have what others want. You're beginning to understand that the Viking Age wasn't an aberration in human history, but a particularly visible example of patterns that repeat across time and cultures. The strong taking from the weak when they can get away with it. The dispossessed seeking opportunities elsewhere. The collision of different societies creating both conflict and innovation. Your modern world has its own versions of these same dynamics, just operating through different mechanisms. After the morning meal, you find yourself drawn back to the shore where yesterday's adventure began. The longship sits exactly where it was pulled up onto the beach, but somehow it looks different now, less like an instrument of war, and more like what it really is: a masterpiece of engineering designed to carry human dreams across impossible distances. You run your hand along the carved dragon head, feeling the smooth wood worn by countless hands, countless voyages. This ship has stories to tell beyond yesterday's raid. Storms weathered, coasts explored, enemies faced, treasures won and lost. She's beautiful, isn't she? You turn to find Eric approaching, carrying a wooden bucket and some tools. Apparently he's planning to do maintenance work on the vessel. I was just thinking about all the places she's been, you say. All the things she's seen. Built her myself, you know. Took 3 years to select the right trees, shape the timbers, fit everything together. He sets down his bucket and pats the dragon head affectionately, like raising a child in some ways. You put your heart into it, then trust it to carry you safely through dangerous times. You help him as he begins checking the ship for damage from yesterday's voyage, running his hands along the hull, testing the tightness of joints, examining the sail for tears or wear. Any problems, you ask? Nothing serious. A few loose rivets, some tar that needs refreshing, normal wear from hard use. As he works, you find yourself studying the construction more carefully. The overlapping planks are fitted with incredible precision, sealed with a mixture of tar and animal hair that somehow remains flexible in all weather. The whole structure is designed to bend with the waves rather than fight them. How did you learn to build ships, you ask? From my father, mostly, but also from watching other builders, trying new techniques, learning from mistakes. He points to a section near the stern. See that joint there? First ship I built, I made that connection too rigid. Split apart in a storm off the Danish coast. What happened? Nearly drowned, along with my whole crew. Learned a valuable lesson about the difference between strong and flexible. There's a metaphor there that applies to more than shipbuilding. Rigid systems break under pressure. Flexible ones adapt and survive. Is that why you're successful as a raid leader, you ask? Because you've learned to be flexible. Eric considers this question while testing the tension on a rope. Partly, but mostly because I understand that every situation is different. What worked against the English monks wouldn't work against Frankish cavalry. What works in summer storms would be suicide in winter weather. He pauses in his work and looks directly at you. That's what I like about having you in the crew, Bjorn. You think about context, about how things connect to each other. Most warriors just learn one way of fighting and try to apply it everywhere. The compliment pleases you more than it probably should. You're developing genuine respect for these men and their skills, despite the moral complexity of their profession. What makes a good Viking, you ask? Courage, obviously. But more than that, mustactability. We don't conquer other peoples by being stronger than them. We win by being more flexible, more willing to try new approaches. He gestures toward the open sea. Look out there. Every coast we've ever raided, people told us it was impossible. Too far, too dangerous, too well defended. But we found ways, better ships, better tactics, better information. And if the defenders adapt too, if they learn to counter your tactics, then we adapt again. Or find new targets, or switch to trading instead of raiding. Eric shrugs. The sea is wide, and there are always opportunities for men clever enough to find them. This practical flexibility explains a lot about Viking success. They weren't locked into rigid military doctrines or traditional approaches. When raiding became less profitable, they became traders. When local opportunities dried up, they explored new territories. Is that what you see in the future, you ask? More trading, less raiding. Maybe. Depends on how the world changes around us. He returns to his maintenance work, but continues talking. The way I see it, we're living through interesting times. The old Roman Empire is gone, but nothing stable has replaced it. Lots of small kingdoms fighting each other. Lots of undefended wealth. Lots of opportunities for outsiders like us. But that won't last forever. Nothing lasts forever. Eventually someone will build something strong enough to keep us out, or profitable enough to make us partners instead of enemies. Eric tests a joint and nods satisfaction. When that day comes, we'll need to be ready for it. The conversation is interrupted by shouts from the village. Not alarm calls, but the excited cries that usually mean good news of some kind. You both look up to see people gathering near the main path, pointing and calling to each other. A small group of travelers is approaching, probably merchants or messengers bringing news from other settlements. Come on, Eric says, setting aside his tools. Let's see what the world is bringing to our doorstep today. As you walk back toward the village, you find yourself thinking about the broader historical context of this moment. You're living through the early stages of what historians call the Viking Age, a period of Scandinavian expansion that will reshape Europe, establish trade routes from Greenland to Constantinople, and influence the development of nations that won't even exist for centuries. But from inside the experience, it doesn't feel like a grand historical movement. It feels like a series of individual decisions made by practical people trying to solve immediate problems. Eric doesn't see himself as reshaping European civilization. He sees himself as a man trying to provide for his family and community, using the skills and opportunities available to him. This gap between individual experience and historical significance fascinates you. The people making history rarely understand the full implications of their actions. They're too close to the immediate challenges to see the larger patterns. Your unique perspective, experiencing events from both medieval and modern viewpoints, allows you to appreciate both levels simultaneously. You can feel the personal motivations that drive individual choices while also understanding their eventual historical consequences. It's a privilege and a burden, this double vision. You know things that will happen centuries in the future, but you're powerless to change the immediate present. You can see the full arc of Viking influence on European development, but you can't tell Eric that his descendants will establish kingdoms in England, discover America, and help create the trade networks that will eventually evolve into global capitalism. All you can do is live through this moment as completely as possible, experiencing history from the inside while trying to understand what it means to be human in times of great change. The travelers are closer now. Me as three men on horseback, well-dressed and well-armed, probably messengers from another chieftain, bringing news or propositions for alliance. Whatever message they carry, it will become part of the complex web of cause and effect that drives history forward. Another small decision that contributes to patterns too large for any individual to fully comprehend. You quicken your pace, curious to hear what news they bring, what new opportunities or challenges they represent. The story continues, one choice at a time. The three riders dismount near the village center, their horses breathing hard from what was clearly a long journey. These are professional messengers. Their gear is travel-worn but well-maintained. Their bearing alert but respectful. The lead rider is a man about Eric's age, with the kind of weathered face that comes from years of outdoor work. His companions are younger, probably his sons or apprentices in whatever business brought them here. "I seek Eric Ironside," the leader announces to the gathering crowd. "I bring words from Jarl Thorvald of the Northern Fjords." A Jarl Thor, a regional chieftain with authority over multiple villages. This is important news, the kind that could affect everyone in your community. Eric steps forward. "I am Eric Ironside. Speak your message." The messenger reaches into his travel pack and produces a small wooden cylinder sealed with wax. "The Jarl requests your presence at the summer assembly. There are matters of mutual interest to discuss." The summer assembly. You remember hearing about these gatherings, annual meetings where chieftains, successful warriors, and prosperous farmers come together to handle disputes, arrange marriages, plan joint enterprises, and share news from distant lands. Eric breaks the wax seal and unrolls a thin sheet of vellum covered with runic script. His lips move slightly as he reads, and you can see his expression growing more interested with each line. When, he asks without looking up from the message, "The assembly begins in 3 weeks. The Jarl specifically requests that you bring your ship and crew." This draws murmurs from the gathered villagers. Being asked to bring your ship means you're being invited not just as a participant, but as a potential partner in some larger enterprise. "What can you tell me about these matters of mutual interests?" Eric asks. The messenger glances around at the listening crowd, clearly weighing how much he should say publicly. There have been developments in the Eastern Territories, opportunities that might require cooperation between multiple crews. Eastern Territories, the lands beyond the Baltic Sea, where Viking traders and raiders were beginning to establish the river routes that would eventually reach Constantinople and the Black Sea. I see. Eric rolls up the message and tucks it into his belt. Tell the Jarl that Eric Ironside will attend his assembly and that Raven's Wing will be honored to serve in whatever enterprise he proposes. The formal acceptance draws approving nods from the villagers. Being selected for a Jarl's expedition is a mark of respect that reflects well on the entire community. There's more, the messenger continues. The Jarl suggests you bring samples of any unusual treasures you've recently acquired. He has contacts who might be interested in such items. Unusual treasures. The messenger is clearly referring to the results of your Lindisfarne raid, though he's being diplomatic about not mentioning raiding directly. That can be arranged, Eric says carefully. The messengers are offered hospitality, food, drink, and a place to rest their horses. As they're led away to the guest house, the crowd begins to disperse, buzzing with excited conversation about what this invitation might mean. Eric catches your arm as you start to follow the others. Walk with me, he says quietly. You accompany him to a secluded spot overlooking the fjord, where you can talk without being overheard. What do you think, he asks, without preamble, about the invitation? About everything. The timing, the emphasis on Eastern Territories, the interest in unusual treasures. Eric stares out over the water, his expression thoughtful. This isn't just about one raid or one trading expedition. You consider what you know of the historical period. The late 8th century is indeed when Vikings begin their major expansion eastward, establishing the trade routes that will make fortunes and found kingdoms. Sounds like the Jarl is planning something ambitious, you say, something that requires multiple ships and crews. That's what worries me. Eric turns to face you directly. Ambitious plans often mean ambitious risks. I've built a good life here, made enough wealth to last several lifetimes. The question is whether it's worth risking all of that for the chance of something greater. It's a dilemma that resonates across time. The tension between security and opportunity, between being satisfied with what you have and reaching for what you might achieve. What would you risk it for, you ask? That's the question, isn't it? Eric picks up a smooth stone and skips it across the water. More silver. I already have more than I can spend. More fame. The skalds already sing songs about our raids. He pauses, watching the ripples spread across the fjord's surface. Maybe it's not about what I'd gain. He continues slowly. Maybe it's about what I'd regret not trying. You understand the feeling. In your modern life, you've probably faced similar moments. Opportunities that required leaving comfort zones, taking calculated risks for uncertain rewards. The Eastern routes, you say, thinking out loud. If the Jarl is serious about that, it could be more than just another raiding expedition. Explain. Trade networks, permanent settlements, a chance to build something that lasts beyond a single season or a single generation. Eric nods slowly. You see it too. This isn't just about taking wealth from others. It's about creating wealth ourselves. The distinction is important. Raiding is ultimately a zero-sum activity. One person's gain is another's loss, but trade and settlement can create new value, benefit all parties involved. Of course, Eric adds with a wry smile, creating wealth is harder than taking it, requires different skills, different kinds of patience, but maybe more satisfying in the long run. Maybe. He turns back toward the village. 3 weeks to decide, time to think it through properly. As you walk back together, you find yourself thinking about the broader implications of whatever decision Eric makes. If he accepts the Jarl's invitation, you'll likely be part of whatever expedition follows. That could mean traveling deeper into the Viking world, experiencing aspects of their expansion that go beyond coastal raiding. The eastern routes led to interactions with Slavic peoples, Byzantine merchants, even Arab traders, a much more complex and sophisticated network than the simple smash-and-grab stereotype suggests. But it could also mean leaving behind the life you've begun to build here. Ingrid, the village community, the sense of belonging you've developed. The choice isn't just Eric's unwind, it's yours too, even if you don't fully understand your options yet. Back in the village, normal life resumes its rhythm. Children play, women tend their work, men discuss the day's tasks. But underneath the routine, you can sense excitement building. Word of the Jarl's invitation is spreading, and everyone understands that it could mean significant changes for the community. Some families might lose husbands and fathers to dangerous expeditions. Others might gain wealth and status from successful ventures. All of them will be affected by whatever Eric decides. The weight of leadership, you realize, isn't just about making decisions for yourself. It's about accepting responsibility for how those decisions affect everyone who depends on you. Another lesson that applies across time and cultures. As twilight settles over the village, you find yourself walking the familiar paths with new awareness. Every house, every face, every routine task carries additional meaning now that you understand how precarious this peaceful existence really is. The decision Eric faces, whether to accept the Jarl's invitation, will ripple through dozens of lives. Wives who might become widows, children who might grow up without fathers, families who might prosper or fall into poverty based on the success or failure of distant ventures. Ingrid is waiting when you reach your house, a warm meal prepared and the fire burning bright against the evening chill. But she takes one look at your face and sets aside the food. "Sit," she says gently. "Tell me what's troubling you." You settle onto the bench beside the fire and try to organize your thoughts. How do you explain concerns that span multiple lifetimes and worldviews? The Jarl's message, you begin. It's not just an invitation, it's a choice between different kinds of life. She nods as if this makes perfect sense. All important choices are like that. Not just between this thing or that thing, but between different ways of being in the world. Her insight continues to surprise you. Without formal education or modern psychological frameworks, she intuitively grasps concepts that academic philosophers struggle to articulate. If Eric accepts, you continue. Everything changes, not just for him, but for all of us. And if he refuses, then we stay as we are. Safe, comfortable, but maybe smaller somehow. Ingrid brings you a bowl of stew and settles beside you on the bench. My father faced a similar choice once, a chance to join a trading expedition to Ireland. Good opportunity, but dangerous. What did he choose? He went. Said he'd rather fail at something important than succeed at something small. She pauses. He came back wealthy enough to buy this house, marry my mother, build the life I grew up in. And if he hadn't come back, then I would have grown up differently. Poorer, maybe, but not necessarily worse. She takes your hand. The thing is, Bjorn, we can't live all the possible lives. We can only live the one we choose, and try to make it as good as we can. There's profound wisdom in her acceptance of uncertainty. Your modern world often suffers from analysis paralysis, trying to predict and control outcomes instead of accepting that important decisions always involve leaps of faith. What would you choose, you ask? If it were your decision, she considers this seriously. I'd think about what I could live with, not just success or failure, but regret. Could I live with wondering what might have been if I chose safety? It's the same question Eric posed earlier, framed in terms of regret rather than ambition. Could you live with me leaving for months or years at a time, with the possibility that I might not come back at all? I already do, she says simply. Every time you sail beyond the horizon, there's a chance you won't return. That's the price of loving a Viking. Her matter-of-fact acceptance of danger makes you think about the different ways humans adapt to risk. Your modern world tries to eliminate uncertainty through insurance, regulations, and technology. Medieval people accept uncertainty as a basic condition of existence. Neither approach is wrong, but they create very different relationships with fear and possibility. There's something else, you say, struggling to find words for the complex feelings you're experiencing. I feel like I'm not quite myself lately, like I'm becoming someone different. Ingrid sets down her bowl and turns to face you directly. Good different or bad different? I don't know, just different. Like I'm seeing the world through new eyes, understanding things I never noticed before. That happens sometimes, usually after important experiences that change how you think about life. She touches your cheek gently. You've been to foreign lands, faced real danger, made choices that matter. Of course you're different. She's right, but not in the way she imagines. Your transformation goes deeper than normal post-adventure maturation. You're literally becoming a different person, integrating two distinct sets of memories and values. Are you worried about these changes? She asks. Sometimes, I feel like I'm losing touch with who I used to be. Maybe that's not such a bad thing. Maybe who you used to be was too small for who you're meant to become. The observation hits home with unexpected force. Your modern identity, comfortable, predictable, relatively sheltered, does feel constraining compared to the expansive possibilities of this medieval existence. But you're also aware of what you might be losing. The moral clarity of your original worldview, the technological conveniences that made life easier, the social safety nets that protected people from catastrophic failure. Change is frightening, Ingrid continues, but fighting it is usually worse than accepting it. Like trying to hold back the tide, you'll just exhaust yourself. As if to emphasize her point, the sound of waves against the shore drifts through the evening air. The tide turns twice daily, indifferent to human preferences, reshaping the coastline grain by grain. What if the changes make me someone you don't recognize? You ask. Then I'll get to know the new person and decide if I like him as much as the old one. She smiles. But I suspect the important parts will remain the same. The parts that made me fall in love with you in the first place. Her confidence is reassuring, but you wonder if it's justified. How much can a person change before they become essentially someone else? The fire burns lower as the evening progresses, casting longer shadows around the small room. Outside, the village settles into its nighttime rhythms, dogs finding their sleeping spots, children being called in from their games, adults banking fires and securing their homes. Whatever Eric decides, Ingrid says eventually, whatever you decide, we'll face it together. That's what marriage means, not just sharing the good times, but supporting each other through difficult choices. Her loyalty touches you deeply, especially since you know it's based on incomplete information. She's pledging to support a man who isn't entirely the person she thinks he is. Isby is, but maybe that's true of all relationships, to some degree. People change constantly, in small ways and large ones. Love isn't about knowing someone completely it's about choosing to keep learning who they become. I love you, you say, meaning it more than she can possibly understand. I love you too, she replies, both who you were and who you're becoming. As you prepare for sleep, you find yourself thinking about tomorrow's choices and their long-term consequences. In 3 weeks, Eric will need to give his answer to the Jarl. Between now and then, you'll need to decide what role you want to play in whatever comes next. The decision feels momentous, but maybe that's because you're overthinking it. In reality, most of life's important choices are made one small step at a time, not in dramatic moments of conscious decision. You've already chosen to embrace this Viking existence rather than fight it. You've chosen to honor Bjorn's relationships and responsibilities. You've chosen to learn from this experience rather than simply endure it. The next choices will follow naturally from those fundamental commitments. Outside, the night wind picks up, carrying the salt scent of the sea and the promise of storms somewhere beyond the horizon. Change is coming, whether you choose it or not. The only real question is whether you'll meet it with courage and curiosity, or fear and resistance. As the night deepens around your small house, you find yourself settling into that peaceful space between waking and sleeping, where thoughts drift like clouds across a darkening sky. The fire burns low now, just glowing embers that cast gentle, shifting light on the wooden walls. Ingrid sleeps beside you, her breathing soft and regular, one hand resting on your chest in a gesture of unconscious trust. The weight of her touch anchors you to this moment, this life, this version of yourself that feels both foreign and familiar. You think about the journey that brought you here, waking up in a Viking's body, participating in the Lindisfarne raid, experiencing medieval life from the inside. What seemed impossible just days ago now feels like the most natural thing in the world. The integration is nearly complete now. Your modern consciousness no longer feels like a foreign observer trapped in someone else's existence. Instead, it's become part of a larger, more complex identity that encompasses both time frames, both sets of experiences. You understand Eric's dilemma about the Jarl's invitation because you face a similar choice yourself. You could try to return to your original world, your original identity, your original limitations, or you could embrace this expanded version of yourself, with all the responsibilities and possibilities that entails. The choice doesn't feel urgent anymore, perhaps because you've already made it, one small decision at a time, without realizing the cumulative effect. You've chosen to honor Bjorn's marriage, his friendships, his place in the community. You've chosen to learn from Viking perspectives on courage, loyalty, and practical survival. You've chosen to accept moral complexity rather than retreat into simple judgments. In doing so, you've become someone new, neither purely modern nor purely medieval, but something richer and more nuanced than either alone. The realization should be disturbing, but instead it feels peaceful, like finally solving a puzzle you didn't know you were working on. Outside, the wind carries the sound of waves against the shore, that eternal rhythm that connects all human experience across time. The same waves that carried your longship to England also carried Phoenician traders, Roman galleys, and countless other vessels pursuing their own versions of dreams and necessity. You're part of that continuum now, another small consciousness experiencing the ancient dance between safety and adventure, tradition and change, individual desire and collective responsibility. The night sounds of the village gradually quiet, a dog's distant bark, the soft conversation of late returning fishermen, the creak of timber houses settling in the cooling air. These sounds no longer seem foreign or exotic. They're simply the background music of your life now, as familiar as traffic sounds once were in a different existence. Your breathing slows to match Ingrid's, your heartbeat synchronizing with hers in the way of couples who've learned to share space and silence. This intimacy feels genuine now, not like play acting or deception, but like something earned through shared experience and mutual care. Tomorrow will bring new choices, new challenges, new opportunities to understand what it means to be human in difficult times. But for now, there's only this peaceful moment between sleeping and waking, this quiet blessing of warmth and safety and love. You think briefly about your original life, the apartment, the job, the friends who might wonder where you've gone. But those concerns feel distant now, like memories from someone else's dream. Perhaps they were. Perhaps this Viking existence is equally real, equally valid, equally important. Perhaps consciousness is more fluid than you ever imagined, capable of experiencing multiple realities without losing its essential nature. Or perhaps it doesn't matter which interpretation is correct. What matters is how you choose to live within whatever reality you find yourself experiencing. The fire dies down to ash and fading warmth. The house grows quiet, except for the soft sounds of sleeping. Your own thoughts begin to drift and blur, following the ancient path toward dreams. But these won't be dreams of displacement or confusion. They'll be the natural dreams of someone at home in their own life, processing the day's experiences and preparing for tomorrow's possibilities. You're not visiting this existence anymore. You're living it. The transition from waking to sleeping happens gradually, gently, like sinking into warm water. Your last conscious thought is gratitude for the experience, for the insights, for the chance to understand human nature from such an unexpected perspective. Sleep takes you peacefully, completely, naturally, and in sleeping the integration becomes total. The boundary between observer and participant disappears entirely. The modern consciousness that once felt separate merges seamlessly with the medieval identity it has inhabited. When morning comes, it will find not a confused time traveler, but simply Bjorn Moors, a Viking warrior, who dreams sometimes of impossible futures, who thinks deeply about moral complexities, who loves his wife and honors his commitments, while questioning the assumptions that others take for granted. A man shaped by unique experiences into someone both typical of his time and utterly individual. The story continues, but now it continues as life rather than adventure, as natural growth rather than dramatic transformation. The night wind dies down. The waves find their quiet rhythm. The village rests in peaceful security, protected by the presence of warriors who stand ready to face whatever challenges tomorrow might bring. In the morning there will be decisions to make about the Jarl's invitation, preparations for possible expeditions, the daily work of building and maintaining a successful community. But for now, there is only sleep and dreams, and the quiet confidence that comes from knowing who you are and where you belong. The fire dies completely, leaving only warmth in the stones and the promise that it can be rekindled whenever needed. Darkness settles over the fjord like a gentle blessing, holding the village in its protective embrace until dawn calls forth another day of possibility. Sleep well, history dreams alongside you.